Miyama Kaito, third-year university student, walks down the street and notices how peaceful things are. Looking at 3 high school students further ahead, he believes they are having fun, and briefly considers doing some club activities, before giving up, noting that even in high school he didn't have anything he wanted to do. As he resigns to living an unchanging and plain life, he steps on a magic seal, and all 4 are carried away, with one of them being addressed as Hiro-sama. They are greeted by a woman and her retinue, surprised to see 4 people there. Addressing Miyama and the 2 high school girls sometime later, she apologizes for summoning them by mistake, introducing herself as Lilia Albert, Duchess of the Symphonia Kingdom, and the one in charge of the summoning. She then guarantees their safety, and Yusuke Hina asks about the 3rd high school student, Mitsunaga, while the other girl named Kusunoki Aoi asks about their fate. Lilia explains that the boy has been summoned as a hero, and is getting a separate explanation, while reassuring the 3 that they won't be separated or harmed. She then explains that they will be staying in the country for a year with all expenses covered, since it would take time to use the same magic used for the summoning again. Miyama then wonders if there is a demon lord that Mitsunaga must fight, but the surprised Duchess explains that the demon lord was defeated centuries ago by the first hero. There is peace between demons and humans, and any monster trouble is under control due to the Order of Knights and the Adventurers Guild. She continues to tell them that the summoning of the first hero 1,000 years ago became an event that joined demons and humans in peace. So every 10 years they honor it by holding a large festival summoning someone from the same world to be its protagonist. Miyama then writes to his parents about the situation, noting that the other world is at peace. The Duchess apologizes again, and explains that to be the reason for Mitsunaga being summoned, deciding to continue talking over tea. She tells them that the world is composed of 3 subworlds: the mortal world inhabited by humans, the celestial world inhabited by the divine races, and the demon world where the demons live, the latter being the largest and richest in resources. The worlds overlap, being separated by unseen barriers that can be crossed through several gates, making it possible to see demons regularly, while divine race members aren't spotted that often. A maid accidentally spills tea on Miyama, being harshly chastised by Lilia. A maid named Luna then tells him that it is the first time a man was invited inside the mansion, and the Duchess promises to try her best to make their stay in the world comfortable, asking them to contact her if they have any problems. The boy began to look forward to living in that world, and he heads off with Luna to the village, searching for male clothes for him. As they walk in the village, the boy notices a mixed-blood child. Noticing how the 2 races coexist, Luna agrees, revealing herself to be mixed race as well, and telling of how humans were previously unaware of the demon world, and how the demons refrained from invading the mortal world by the order of the 6 demon kings, while the divine world limited itself to watching over the other 2 unless war broke out. This separation of worlds ended when the demon lord amassed an army and challenged one of the demon kings named Hades, who defeated him, and chose to spare his life with a warning. The warning went unheeded, and the demon lord invaded the mortal world, and the 6 kings nor the celestial beings intervened. Soon, the humans summoned a hero to defeat their foe and establish a positive relationship between humans and demons. The first hero went on a journey through the world and finally defeated the demon lord, and peace was signed between the 2 races, with cooperation from the 6 demon kings and large parts of the mortal world. After a new city was built and named after the hero Hikari, Hades cooperated with the hero from very early on. Luna then states she doesn't know what happened to the hero, and though it is believed Hades might know, he hasn't revealed it to anyone. Miyama is amazed at the story and points at a floating wagon, before noticing Luna is gone. At the same time, a well-dressed girl walks across the street being chased by several doves, until they see Miyama calling him a lost bird. As the latter laments getting lost, the girl approaches him and asks if he can be of assistance, as well as if he is a person from another world, since his magical power is similar to that of the heroes. Miyama wonders inwardly if he has magical powers, which the girl confirms after reading his thoughts. She introduces herself as Kuromueina, asking to be addressed as Kudo, and explaining that she is a centuries-old demon, before offering him a pastry and asking what's the matter. After Miyama admits that he's lost, she hands him an amulet imbued with a search spell, which leads him to Luna. He then departs and Kudo waves him goodbye, wishing to meet again. Later that night, Kudo bathes in the mansion and admits that a peaceful and ordinary life suits him better than being the protagonist. He recalls that Lilia had a worried face when he handed her Kudo's necklace. Walking down the hallway, he hears Yuzuki sobbing in her room, and Kusunoki approaches him wishing to talk, asking him why he is so calm at their current situation. He admits that he isn't worried despite the risks he might face in that unknown world, believing that if something happened, it would have been because he was unlucky and he was destined to die regardless of where he was. The girl is shocked by his answer and decides to ask him another question. At the same time, Lilia notes that she didn't expect Luna and Shadow to lose sight of Miyama, certain that an insect used recognition inhibition magic on the boy, and is probably after the other world's technology. She orders Luna to contact the king, certain that they must deal with Kudo urgently. Meanwhile, Miyama ponders on Kusunoki's question, regarding how he wished to spend his year there, being unsure about what he wants. He is relieved things are more or less normal, but can't help but wish for something special, expecting a godsend. Reading his mind, Kudo appears and stuffs his mouth with pastries, before offering her help again. Noting that humans worry about strange things, she notes that she likes children like him, and suggests that they go treasure hunting, grabbing him and flying away. As they soar, she notes that long ago, a child said the same as him, to meet the expectations of others, asking what he really wants to do and noting that it is fine to feel empty for now, comparing him to a baby bird wishing to fly and offering to show him how to fly. She invites him to search for his treasured wish hidden inside of him while on that peaceful world, stating that he is the main character in his own story. Miyama then notes that the encounter was beginning, as he became the protagonist of his story. Miyama tells his tragic backstory, having lost his parents at the age of 12 in a car crash and having lived ever since with no need for friends or lovers nor something he wants to do, being scared of the misery that makes him happy until he met Kudo. Waking up, he sees writing in the air stating that the demon will visit him again. He then washes his face and gets ready, summing up his situation before running into Lilia, who asks him if he slept well. Lying, he omits the fact that he met Kudo, and is surprised when the girl brings up the previous day's teacup incident, insisting that the maid regrets it, and that he should hear her apologize. He brushes off the whole incident, attributing it to the confusion of seeing a man in the house, and insists that he wishes they could still get along. Yusuke and Kusunoki then approach them, and Miyama apologizes to the latter about their talk the other day, making the other girl slightly jealous before they all head for breakfast. At the table, they discuss that world's New Year human traditions, and Yusuke asks about the gemstones floating in the lamps. The Duchess explains that they are magical tools that store a magic formula, and can be activated by anyone with magic power. The stones are necessary for most magic due to the specialized knowledge they contain, and as a demonstration, Lilia uses wind magic from the palm of her hand, being chastised by Luna for doing so in the middle of a meal. Lilia continues her explanation, stating that everyone has magic power, but one must study to use it, and that there are 8 possible types of magic, with a year of study being necessary to activate even simple spells. She then offers to show them magic textbooks, which the girls find interesting, and the Duchess explains that the summoned individuals automatically understand the New World's language. Hina is excited at the prospect of studying magic, but Aoi is more hesitant, and the Duchess offers to arrange for a teacher. In his room, Miyama eagerly reads the magic books and wonders if Kudo could teach him, causing her to appear out of nowhere and ask the startled boy if he wants her to teach him magic. Despite his initial hesitation, he agrees and asks for her help, which she gladly agrees to give, while the boy notes that she is acting differently, and some demons back in the demon world start wondering where she went. One of the demons produces an invitation to Kudo to attend a party in Symphonia, and notes that she is interested in the hero and considers him her favorite child, having asked for Shadow Vanaru's blessing. Another demon is shocked at this, noting it will be difficult on the otherworlder. Back in the mortal world, Miyama begins to shimmer with magical power. He feels its warmth, and asks Kudo which of the 8 types of magic she is good at, but she replies that there are only 2. Non-transmutation magic that uses magic power as it is, or transmutation magic that changes the power into something else. Reading the magic textbooks, she realizes they break down the magic process and that it would take a long time to learn magic from them, explaining that they would be necessary to do advanced things, but invoke magic only requires understanding the feeling of moving magic power. After stating her support, Kudo asks the boy if he is going to the party. Lilia explains that she requested invitations for them to attend the New Year's party at the Royal Palace the next evening, where Mitsunaga will be filling in for his role as the hero. Reading a newly arrived letter, the Duchess grows enraged when realizing that the sender neglected to invite Miyama, addressing him as brother. Luna explains that the king is her younger brother and is very protective of her, trying to drive men away from her. Eerily, Lilia grabs a sword and prepares to head off to end her brother as punishment for his misbehavior, frightening the other 2 girls. She suddenly changes her mood as she sees them shuddering, and when prompted, reveals that she used to be a knight until recently. Luna notes that she's too humble, explaining that she was the strongest division captain of the 2nd Division, with unparalleled military exploits and skills. and that she entered service after seeing her defeat several men in a martial tournament, causing Lilia to cry in embarrassment. Later, Kaito notes that he wasn't particularly interested in attending the party, and Kudo appears noting his plight, and offering to half-end the king to force him to invite the boy. He then admits that he isn't good at formal events, so the demon suggests they do a barbecue with some of her friends, to which he agrees, so she extends an invitation. Next evening, a fancy carriage pulled by unicorns arrives to pick him up, and he recalls how shocked Lilia was when she saw his invitation. Kudo sent him some comfortable clothes to wear aside from the elegant clothes the Duchess gave him, and as he travels to the venue, he wonders just who Kudo is. Arriving, he heads to a river and searches for Kudo and her friends, being surprised to see her and her fellow demons. A demon announces that he brought 3 flying dragons, while a tiny fairy brought some vegetables and an ogre named Ahato brought a bag of fish, and a skeleton brought the seasoning. With everyone present, Kudo introduces Kaito to the group, while they reply in kind. Sekis the skeleton explains that the invitation was delivered by one of his subordinates, while the fairy Lazaria laughs at the situation and the maid Ain offers to bring some drinks. Everyone then toasts to welcome Kaito. He plans to drink while the barbecue gets ready, but Ahato invites him to sit next to him, while Ain quickly arrives with barbecued food, moving at dizzying speeds and serving food to all those present. Ahato explains that she was Kudo's maid even before Sekis and Laz were born, being the second strongest in the group and whispering that she is like a monster, causing her to suddenly appear and offer more food to Kaito, while staring both of them down. The ogre then notes that the boy must have it rough being in a strange land, but reassures him, stating that he has Kudo's family there. The boy asks if it's normal for a demon family to be made up of different races, but the ogre admits that it is unusual, explaining that he was born with blue skin, 2 horns, and far stronger than the others. For those differences, he was cast away and rampaged around with another outcast, until Kudo met them while close to death and fed them without showing any hostility, treating them as family and being gentle to them despite her overwhelming power. He explains that they love her dearly, because despite being from different races, they're family, which the boy finds nice. Ahato then states that as her friend, he considers him to be a friend as well, and allows him to address him informally. As he gladly continues to make friends, he merrily chats with Laz, and Noin asks him if he's enjoying himself. As he replies that he is, Noin removes her helmet and asks what's going on in Japan. She explains to the surprised Kaito that she was summoned in the past and refused to return to her world, being reincarnated into a demon with the help of Kudo. She then notes that being seen by the demon, he surely must be the same as her, and as they chat, the girl notes that despite not knowing if she isn't empty anymore, she found the treasure she wished for in that world, and she believes that he can find it too, urging him to enjoy his time there. He then approaches Kudo, who is sitting on a tatami, and notes that it is about time, as a tree suddenly starts shining. She explains that it is the light tree, storing magical power from the air and emitting it once a month, and she wanted to show it to him, so she made a barbecue out of it. The boy falls silent and then thanks her, noting how she has been looking out for him since he was summoned. She then devilishly pulls him to her lap, asking the blushing boy if the barbecue was fun, which he admits. She then notes that he was tired since he came to that unfamiliar world, and advises him to be careful, stating that he can depend on her and telling him to rest. As his eyes begin to close, he notes how long it has been since people cared about him and he behaved normally, admitting that he was scared and ran away, and that now he wants to find his treasure in that world, falling asleep as she smiles down on him. The next morning, Kaito wakes up and they wrap up the barbecue, with Noin handing him a cube as a souvenir. She explains that it is a magic box that acts as a warehouse, registering him as its owner and explaining how it's used. He is hesitant to accept such a prized item, but the others insist, while Kudo jealously points out that she wanted to make the magic box, and Ahato noting that if she made the box, it would be too big. After handing him the box, she then presents the main souvenir. It comprises of a pile of onigiri and takuan that she personally produced, while Laz made the rice field and Ain did the cooking at her request. She admits that Laz grows the highest quality crops and Ain is better at cooking than the most skilled chef, so she couldn't compete with that. Kaito thanks everyone for everything, and Ain coldly looks at Ahato when he accepts the thanks, despite him having nothing to do with the gifts. Noin then nervously approaches the boy and asks him if he knows how to make tofu, and after explaining what he knew, Ain believes she could make it without any issues, causing the former Japanese girl to shake in excitement at the prospect. As he wonders what it was that made Kudo save Noin and thanking everyone, they all bid their farewells, and plan to see each other as well. Kudo is the last to send him off, promising to see him the next day, and he begins to ask her why she saved him but changes his mind, with the girl's face growing serious as the carriage heads off. Alone, she notes how Kaito is similar, and that someday his wings will grow and he will take off into the sky, wondering what beautiful wings he will show her. Back at Lilia's mansion, he apologizes for his tardiness, and the Duchess asks him about the barbecue, and glad that he had fun, asks him to tell her about it. Having heard the story, she notes that Noin was formerly from another world, explaining that she heard the rumors of the hero choosing to stay permanently, but not about reincarnating into a demon. She recalls that there was a person who was originally human but went on to live for over 100 years. But to have the power to change the lifespan and race of a being, the demons must be at least Count rank or even Duke rank. Lilia then explains that though there is no class-based system or aristocracy in the demon world, high-ranking demons are put into categories for convenience, with a Count rank demon being comparable to a nation in strength, equal or better than the high-ranking gods of the celestial world. Meanwhile, Duke rank demons are scarce and difficult to meet. Lilia then explains that high-ranking demons often use information concealment magic, which prevents third parties from getting information without the caster's permission, and which prevented Yusuke and Kusunoki from hearing most of the names and content of the conversation. This also applies to the 6 kings, and as proof, Lilia recites their names and traits. With Miyama hearing the names of the War King Megiddo Argestes Borgonez, the World King Redwood Yggdrasil, and the Dragon King Magmawel Bascus Cardo Kartsvald. She then notes that even aristocrats don't have the opportunity to meet high-ranking demons, noting his talent to make connections, and advising him to cherish them. Luna then teases her mistress, causing her to drag the maid off and leave the otherworlders alone. Miyama then produces some of the food Ain gave him, winning the girls over. He then asks why Yusuke addressed him as senpai, finding out that she was the sister of the class president of his class when he was in high school, noting that her brother complained that he never paid attention and slept in class. He ponders on the trouble he must have caused the class president, telling his sister to ask him for forgiveness on his behalf. He then asks them about the party at the royal palace, and they sigh and reveal that it was difficult, since they had to constantly rely on Lilia, and Mitsunaga was constantly looking down on them. Miyama asks them if the boy wasn't dating one of the 2 girls, which they deny. Lost in thought, the boy recalls a famous dialogue from an online game, and he and Kusunoki recite it in unison, which shocks both of them. They then begin exchanging questions concerning the game, while a confused Yusuke looks on. Elsewhere, Shadow Venaru reads Kudo's letter, asking her to bestow a blessing upon Kaito. 5 days after the summoning, Lilia and the other worlders head to a temple to receive a blessing. The Duchess explains that blessings are a god's protection, and they are going to the Temple of Health so they can get a protection against the world's sicknesses. Blessings received by a priest are like spells, while those received by a god are more powerful. They arrive at the massive temple, being amazed by its size, and the throngs of people arriving to get their blessing, while elsewhere the goddess, Shadow Venaru, calmly sips tea. Lilia finds it odd that the temple is so crowded on that date, explaining that normally aristocrats head there to personally get a god's blessing, but on the 5th, many high-ranking gods are invited to the royal palace, so nobles gather there instead. Luna finds out that the commotion is due to rumors that the goddess of time will visit that temple, and a surprised Lilia explains that she is a supreme god, far more powerful than the higher gods and lower gods, but still below the creation god in the celestial ranking. Due to the rarity of seeing such a being, people have gathered at the temple, and as the group enters, they receive a change of clothes and are separated by gender, prior to receiving the blessings. Having donned his robe, he is led into a waiting room, expecting to meet a dozen other men there, but as he opens the door, he stumbles onto a field of flowers. The door disappears behind him as he looks around in confusion, when a voice without intonation welcomes him as a person liked by Kuromu, and a human from another world. A beautiful presence with golden eyes appears before him, introducing herself as Shadow Venaru, and thanking him for coming, explaining that she brought him there to bestow him with a blessing, before flashing him with light and stating that it is done. She then manifests a table and a tea set and invites him for tea, telling him that he can call her just Shiro, just as Kudo does, without using the sama, being adamant on the issue. Confused, the boy wonders what's going on and why they're having tea, and reading his mind, the goddess explains that Kudo asked her to grant her blessing onto him, and as his companion's blessings will take some time, they should have some tea to get to know each other. Thinking she should have prepared some tea cakes, she manifests a platter of baby castellas like those Kudo had, but with an awful wasabi flavor that neither like, revealing Kudo gave them to her. He tries to find another subject to talk about, and she asks about an embarrassing memory, so he frantically changes the subject, asking about the effects of her blessing. She calmly replies that she doesn't know, since it was the first time she gave her blessing, and explains that she isn't the goddess of anything, much to his surprise. Moving on, she asks if humans yearn for great power, which he confirms, stating that human countries yearn for someone special, even himself. Hearing this, she puts down her cup and calmly states that she will give it to him, noting that she rarely converses with humans in that manner, and it may just be fate. Shiro states that she can give him what he wants, whether it be power, wisdom, wealth, fame, or things beyond the reach of humans, asking him what it is he wants. Kaito's heart begins beating ever faster as he realizes what is being offered, and he finally refuses the offer and thanks her. The goddess asks why, and he replies that he doesn't believe that she could give him what he really wants, recalling what Kudo said, and stating that he is fine with how he is now, and just has to look for what he wants on his own and doesn't need any of her blessings. He vows to get what he really desires even if he suffers and struggles, grabbing it with his own hands because that's what he believes. Shiro then smiles, stating that she changed her mind and revealing that she only imitated what lesser gods did for the blessing at Kudo's request, canceling it. He feels a loud crack and wonders if she is angry, as the goddess lifts her hand stating she will now do this seriously, because she is interested in him. By her name, she commands the world, declaring Kaito to be worthy and ordering earth, sea, sky, and stars to protect and nurture him, holding his face and granting him her blessing, and beckoning him to be incredible in the world in conjunction with her name. After the blessing is complete, she notes that his companion's blessings are over, and he awkwardly thanks her. She hands him a jar of tea herbs, asking if she can invite him to have tea with her again, and he agrees while noting that he would love to have the tea cakes that Shiro thinks are delicious, and stating that the tea was fine, as he senses her surprise. As the boy departs, the goddess notes that she understands the reason Kudo took interest in Kaito, noting that he was so similar to her in the shape of his soul. Outside the Temple of Health, Miyama rejoins the group, noticing the bustling crowd. Yusuke notices the jar of tea herbs, and Lilia is surprised that she liked him so much that she gave him a present, and even more so when learning that they talked over some tea. Though he tries to play it down, she explains that having an interaction with the gods is proof that he has earned a certain amount of trust from the celestial world, which can be considered as a kind of authority in the world's aristocratic society. They then run into the fat and unsightly Count Dukas, who greets Lilia while Kaito erroneously believes he must be a mix of human and orc. The man then turns his attention towards Yusuke and Kusunoki, praising their beauty and white robes, in a menacing and creepy way which terrifies the girls. Noticing this, Kaito stands between the Count and the girls and introduces himself, and the aristocrat calls him plain and compares him to a coachman before departing. Lilia thanks him for the intervention, telling him that the Count is known for his lust. While he checks on the girls, Luna notes that only men like him approach her lady, suggesting they use Miyama's skills to attract a good candidate. The girls then suggest that he is a lucky figure, teasing that they should pray to him, while Yusuke grabs his cuff. Suddenly, everyone turns as the goddess of time arrives. People make way and kneel as the procession advances, and the goddess walks calmly while surrounded by priestesses. She then turns and heads in the direction of the group, asking Lilia if she is a noblewoman and if Miyama is her servant. As she hesitates, she addresses him directly, noting that he seems to be blessed with a strange fate, stating that she doesn't know the details and coldly asking who is the demon of carnage that has taken a liking to him at first sight. And he recalls that Shiro said something similar. Addressing Lilia, the goddess states that she seems to have summoned an interesting existence, and would like to talk with her again about it at a later date, apologizing for imposing, and giving the Duchess her blessing of time in exchange for the hassle before departing. Luna then orders everyone to run to the carriage while she carries her mistress over her shoulder to escape the curious crowd. Lilia is overwhelmed at having the goddess of time remember her name and bless her, panicking at the thought of talking to her one-on-one, and asking her to accompany her. Since servants are not allowed, Kusunoki suggests that Miyama go instead, since the goddess was interested, and Lilia throws herself at him while begging him to go, until he relents. Later that night, Kudo appears in Kaito's room, and asks if something happened with Shiro. She laughs after hearing the entire story, noting that it is no wonder she blessed him, since she never expected his answer, explaining that it is unusual but amazing, and she should be proud of it, since it is strange for Shiro to get interested in someone since she is so impartial. She tells him that while everyone likes and dislikes certain things, Shiro doesn't, since everything in the world holds the same value. Yet she was interested in him and acknowledges him, placing him above all the other things that she feels indifferent about, making his achievement amazing. Kudo then hugs him, stating that she doesn't care about that, being happy that he was able to think about what he wanted, and describing the current Kaito as really cool. He notes how sly she is, having erased his anxiety and confusion and replaced them with a sense of warmth. She then trains on him on how to use his magical power, noting that he will be able to use it in 3 days and giving him a handwritten book on beginner magic as a gift. Opening it, he sees it is very easy to understand and thanks her, asking if he can show it to Yusuke or Kusunoki. But he then realizes that doing so would risk revealing information on Kudo, choosing to prioritize her wish rather than cause her trouble. She grows somber for a while, but then happily pulls out 3 other copies of the book, confusing Kaito. She explains that she isn't hiding her identity, and uses information concealment so she doesn't cause a hassle while eating out, since she is well known, and sneaks into the mansion to avoid the formalities required to enter normally. And she sent the invitation under another name because she thought it would be easier to explain the invitation if it was from a child. She then asks if it would help if she visited under her name and explained it to Lilia, to which she agrees, hoping she had done that from the start. The demon then happily writes a letter and promises to come by 2 days later. The next morning, Kaito explains the situation to Lilia, who states her relief that he's regarded so favorably by a high-ranking demon, and wondering if she heard of her. She begins to tremble as she reads it, somberly passing it to Luna, who soon faints. Rising, Lilia orders that everything be prepared to receive an important guest, warning that disrespect won't be allowed, and ordering the finest chefs and ingredients be brought and that a message be sent to the king. She then states that the Dark King is coming there the next day, which causes all demon servants to fall back in shock. In ancient times, a monster was born into the world, appearing like an indiscernible form, and possessing terrible power and nothing else. A monster of emptiness, given form through power alone, searching for both its form and its meaning, traveling the world, and starting to think it full of impurities. In the present, Kudo searches for the one who put the cognitive inhibition magic on Kaito, suspecting demons but unaware of who was doing it. She questions a lesser demon, warning it to not deceive her and punishing it for doing bad things. Back in the mansion, everyone is shocked at the news that the Dark King is coming there, while Kaito comes to grips with the fact that Kudo is one of the 6 demon kings. Lilia is in utter panic, unable to cope with the situation, while Luna urges her to calm down. Kaito notes the maid's calmness, and though she starts that way, she soon goes insane, noting that surely death awaits them if something were to displease the Dark King. The boy approaches the frantic Lilia, noting that they shouldn't exaggerate, and realizing how the situation turned into a big deal. At noon that same day, Kudo approaches the estate while acting different from her usual self, as if an army was marching under her. Approaching Lilia, she apologizes for the sudden visit and is welcomed by the girl, who guides her through the mansion and into the dining room, while Kaito senses how unapproachable she feels, noting he doesn't feel free to talk. Suddenly, she drops her serious face, winking at Kaito and acting as usual, telling the relieved boy to sit next to her at the table. Sitting in front of the bewildered Lilia, Kaito then admits his surprise that Kudo was the Dark King, but she simply points out that she just never introduced herself properly, since everyone just calls her that. Luna then nervously hands Kudo her tea, and the demon immediately recognizes her and recalls meeting her 10 years prior when she helped her and her mother, patting her head and stating that she is glad to meet again. She then turns to the petrified Duchess, asking to call her Lilia-chan, and offering to meet another time, and informally addresses the 2 other girls. She then apologizes for entering the mansion without permission, and asks if she could come around once in a while, to which the frantic girl agrees. Lilia then orders the tea cakes to be brought out, and though Kudo notes it looks hard to eat, she compliments their flavor. Luna then announces a letter arrived from the palace, causing Kudo to grow somber, as Lilia tells her that the king would like to meet her in person, smiling eerily while pointing out that the king outcast her friend from the evening party. Terrified, Lilia tells Luna to return the sentiment, as Kaito notes how the mood suddenly became dangerous and notices the Duchess mouthing for him to help. He then produces his magic box and tells Kudo that he brought her candy, and the girl is delighted as he pulls out a tray of jam cookies. Later, they all head outside, and Kudo suggests that they have tea in the sun, producing some baby castellas and joking about taking out her dragon, before actually producing a baby dragon, which takes a liking to Lilia. Everyone then has a good time outside, and after a while, Kudo bids her farewell and prepares to depart, having managed to get everyone to open up to her. She then hands Lilia a piece of paper, explaining that she has already tidied up the demon world, and asking if she can leave the human world to her, to which she agrees. The demon then brushes off the subject when Kudo asks her about it, recalling how she decided to forgive the wrongdoer since no harm was committed, warning that there won't be a next time, while smiling. Hearing this, Kaito notes how complicated and unstable the world is, and how the primordial monster mentioned earlier gained form and built her heart, walking a new path established as Kuromueina. Seeing her interact with the girls, he notes how Kudo managed to have people open up, realizing that he got it wrong and he was just one of Kudo's friends, and not particularly special at all, which is kind of unfortunate. The Dark King then approaches him and thanks him for the cookies, telling him she felt lonely not talking to him all day, and whispering that next time they should go somewhere alone. He is surprised by this, noting that he is no match for her, and wondering if she saw through him and his feelings. Lilia, still surprised to have met one of these 6 kings, notes that Kudo is just like the rumors, and Kusunoki notes how kind she is. Wondering if the other demon kings are the same, Lilia disabuses them of the notion, explaining that the Dark King is the most gentle of the world gods, noting she is unsure as to whether the Dragon King or the Phantasmal King started the rumor, and stating that one's life is forfeit after displeasing the War King and the Death King. She explains that it is rare to come into contact with one of the 6 kings, and Yusuke wonders if Miyama could get acquainted with the other 6 kings, though Kusunoki is having none of it. Relaxing, Lilia states that the talk with the Goddess of Time took a weight off her shoulders, planning to rest comfortably, when Luna interrupts her, bringing letters from the palace, nobles, companies, temples, and others, noting that her new acquaintances have made her the woman of the hour, and urging her to read the letters before more arrive the next day. Lilia begins to sob at the sight of the pile of letters, while cursing a confused Kaito. Half a month now after the summoning, Kaito waits in the town square for Kudo to arrive. He is shocked by her sudden appearance and blushes when seeing her attire, noting that she seems different than normal, before she grabs his hand and urges him to go. He is surprised at this and turns utterly livid when she tells him it's a date. He then recalls how it all started a few days earlier. In a flashback, Kaito looking out of the window at Lilia's mansion, thinking it would rain despite it being sunny, suddenly turning as Kudo appears and notes that his magic is being released, pointing out that he now has the foundation to use magic and should be able to control it in 2 days. He confirms this, feeling the magic power, and Kudo suggests they go outside to train on controlling the magic, but he points out that it's going to rain soon. To the demon's surprise, it soon begins to pour, and as she wonders if it will pass by, Kaito hears a voice telling him that it will clear up at night. She asks him if he knew it was going to rain and looks with interest when he explains that it just came to his mind. She then explains that other worlders ended up growing up in a different environment, and most have specialized magic only they can wield. Many summoned heroes were unable to return to their worlds, and there were those among them with powerful teleportation magic or powerful water skills. And the first-generation hero Hiraki could transform magic into objects such as weapons. Kudo then notes that he might be able to influence the weather or have foresight, and recalling that he has Shiro's blessing, she asks for permission to test him a little bit. As he agrees, she immobilizes him and asks him to move, and the boy slowly starts to move a hand before succumbing to Kudo's magic and collapsing in her arms. She apologizes for the test, but reveals that he has an extreme sensitivity to magic in the surrounding area, to the point where he can sense the faint emotions behind the magic's intent. She explains that magic is influenced by the wielder's emotion, being more damaging when used with hostility, and giving peace of mind when used with affection. She further deduces that his magic isn't limited to perception, noting that he was able to normally converse with Shiro, and he was able to move despite being pressed by her magic, feats which would be impossible for a normal person. Perceiving that Kudo's magic had no killing intent, he adapted in what she defines as sympathy magic. Noting his exhaustion, she tells him to rest, and places his head on her lap before asking if he is free the next day, asking him out on a date. Now out of his flashback, Kaito is being led through the streets by Kudo in the first date he's ever had in his life, wondering if he can last at this rate. They then head to a shop to get some food, and the shopkeeper greets Kudo and serves them their special red bear sandwich. She then notes that there are not too many people there, since a wyvern flock has been spotted up north, and the Adventurers Guild and the Knights went to take them down. Kaito asks if wyverns aren't dangerous, but she explains that they don't have a high intellect and are pretty weak. Kaito thinks that she could clean them up without any damages, but she states that she can't, since the country should solve its troubles by itself, especially since humans and demons are on equal footing, and she shouldn't step in recklessly unless things got out of hand. Kaito asks to pay for the meal, but Kudo insists on paying, noting that she is rich. Kaito still insists, however, and the shopkeeper agrees, much to the demon's surprise. Once on the streets, he asks her if she will be fine walking around town, since she is famous after all, but she explains that it'll be fine, since she is using cognitive inhibition and information concealment magic that makes her look like a regular girl if she isn't directly interacting with anyone. Kaito is shocked at this, believing that everyone seeing him hold hands with a small girl will think he's a lolicon, but then noting that they might just look like siblings. Seeing some sealed fruits, she buys him one to drink, and taps it like a coconut, placing 2 straws in it. He is hesitant at first, but relents as she asks if he doesn't want to share. being slightly embarrassed as people look at them strangely. She then leads him to an area with magic goods stores, selling personally made items, examining the wares on display. A vendor tries to sell him a reusable space transportation magic tool, offering to sell it for 30,000 R. But just as he is about to agree, Kudo tells him to stop, while noting that his tool is too cheap. The vendor is terrified as he realizes who she is, and he apologizes as she continues to expose his scam, noting the magic crystals aren't pure enough. As they leave, Kudo expresses her disgust at those who run businesses disguised as magic goods stores like that, especially since she was the one who created them, and then explains how magic crystal purity works, with the darker crystals being purer. Kaito then realizes how high quality Kudo's necklace is, but suddenly they both turn, as they sense something approaching, seeing a pack of wyverns descend from the skies as the townspeople cry in horror. As the wyverns descend on the town, Kaito wonders if the Knight's Order failed in dealing with them. But Kudo quickly points out that there are only 7 creatures, most likely the survivors of the subjugation, noting that they've come too fast after the battle. The boy then senses that the beasts are panicked, and the underworld king grows serious, wondering if they are running away from something more terrifying than the subjugation party. Kaito is distracted by a crying child, and notices a wyvern descend to attack them, turning to notice the somber Kudo standing alone as the creatures remain frozen mid-air, being restrained by her magic. Coldly, she recalls that she didn't wish to get recklessly caught up in the country's troubles, but would also help out if she had a reason to do so. As she conjures a massive seal in the sky, she angrily states that she was looking forward to the day, having dressed up and having managed to have a fun date with Kaito, declaring that if the wyverns bother them, she will get pissed. The creatures then vaporize without a trace, and Kudo turns, smiling at the boy, telling him to continue their date. She explains to the shocked boy that she used spatial annihilation magic on the monsters, before turning to see if the child was injured, causing Kaito to smile. They then continue their date, eating tyrant worm's meat and visiting an exotic plant store, before entering a bookstore. Kaito plans to buy a book for some light reading, and she suggests a book about the first hero. Opening it, the boy wonders what kind of person the first hero really was, to which Kudo replies, noting that he has met her before, much to his surprise. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Ain, who informs her that the king wishes to thank her personally for dealing with the wyverns, departing to prepare a bloodbath after Kudo dismisses her due to being on a date. At a jewelry shop, the demon tries on different necklaces. Kaito prefers a silver one, and though she likes the design, she discards it, since it might snap if she went magical beast mode. They then rest next to a fountain, and Kudo uses her powers to tell the pigeons to stop bothering them and leave them alone, as they have no feed for them, later asking if the boy read those birds' feelings. She attributes this to his sympathetic magic, explaining that depending on how he uses it, he can find people by spreading his magical powers. She attributes this to his sympathy magic, explaining that depending on how he uses it, he can find people by spreading his magical powers, sense the movements of his opponent's magic, or even converse with animals and demons, with there really being endless possibilities. Kaito shyly approaches her, intending to gift her the necklace from earlier, when she suddenly turns and devilishly asks if he can tell what she is thinking of. Blushing, he states that he can't, and she apologizes for being a little mean, before telling him that the date was really fun, suggesting that they hang out together again, while pointing that there is no need to hurry since there is still lots of time. Kaito pauses, thinking on how he only ever received from Kudo, and how despite not knowing anything about her and spending such a short time together, he is taken by her, and wants to know more and give something back. He thanks her for everything and asks her if it's alright for him to invite her out next time, to which she gladly agrees. Smiling, the boy thinks on how he will get to know her little by little, and get closer to her heart, until one day, 10 hours prior in the mountains north of the capital, the wyverns fled in panic as a girl advanced down the road, calling them hindrances and causing the creatures to fall lifeless on the spot. A few days after the date with Kudo, Kaito returns to the bookstore accompanied by a half-demon, who goes by the name of Sieglind, whom he thanks. Smiling, she replies in writing. She oversees security at Lilia's mansion, having been a member of the Knight's Order before receiving a wound to the neck in battle which rendered her speechless, though Kudo can use his perception magic to understand her by her gestures. They pick out cooking books for Sieglind since cooking is her hobby, as well as books about the creatures and history of the world for Kudo, and self-help books to deal with stress. The former knight suggests they might be for Lilia, and he admits that Luna asked him for advice on how to help her, since she seemed to be extremely tense about the upcoming conversation with the goddess of time. Back in the mansion, Kudo refers to the goddess informally as Kronois-chan, explaining to the nervous boy that though her speech might be a little stiff and she might be intimidating, she is generous towards humans, so he shouldn't worry. She then suggests he take Ain with him, since she is friendly with the goddess, and he wonders if it wouldn't be a burden on the maid. But while he thinks this, she summons her. Ain suddenly appears, agreeing to her master's request to accompany Kaito, and explaining that it is a maid's duty to respond immediately after being called upon by her master. At the appointed hour, a stressed-out Lilia and Kudo meet Ain outside of the temple. Once inside, the boy expresses his relief that she is coming with them, and though glad to be of use, she asks him why she was chosen to accompany him. Surprised, he repeats what Kudo said about them getting along, and though she implies that they don't, she merely notes that if Kudo says so, then it must be true. Before Kaito can ask any further questions, they are led into the chamber where the goddess awaits. Kuromueina starts to greet them, but her demeanor suddenly changes into rage as she notices Ain, demanding to know why she is there. She addresses the maid as a speck of trash, and Ain promptly calls her flat-chested in return. Sparks fly between them, and as the maid swiftly passes by her, the goddess furiously tells her to stop moving around in her suspended time as though it didn't exist, admonishing her for ignoring the laws of time as the other two guests look on in horror. Ain coldly replies that only a master can bind her maid, and she will not be bound by anything else, chastising her for not understanding and referring to her as flat-chested again. Kaito looks in dismay as they exchange insults and begin to bounce across the room at impossible speed. Lilia asks what's happening, but the resigned boy merely notes that he has grown too used to events past his understanding. The girl implores him to deal with them somehow, and though he realizes it's impossible to step in, he considers just stopping them. Using his sympathy magic, he fills his magic with intent and forces the two entities to be aware of their surroundings, asking them to please stop fighting. Surprised, they halt midair and turn to see Kaito, and Lilia notes that they were able to understand what he felt. Kuromueina finds his magic interesting and apologizes for the fray, heading to the table and turning to discuss their main issue for the day, though she notes that most of the reasons for summoning them have faded since Ain's arrival. As the maid quickly sets a tea table, the goddess tells Kaito that she felt an unusual pressure from him, with signs that he was apt to surpassing her as well as fragments of Kudo's magic. Upon the last comment, Ain coldly hands her a glass of milk, once again mocking her flat chest, and she replies that neither she nor Kudo have changed, noting that she is still wandering around the world. She continues to discuss how to return these summoned heroes back to their world with Lilia, while excluding Kaito from the conversation. The boy notes how the Duchess remained thoughtful about people like him, despite being constantly stressed by her duties, hoping she could refresh her mood. Suddenly, a voice in Kaito's head suggests going to the sacred tree festival held by the elves, and he enjoys the idea until he notices that it isn't his inside voice. As he turns, the voice notes that it isn't there, and noticing its lack of intonation, he realizes it is Shiro, communicating through telepathy. She explains that she saw him being ignored and bored, so she thought of talking to him. He criticizes her for the remark, but also interprets her taking time out of her day to talk to him as an act of kindness, and she considers this back and forth as his way of amassing favorability with her, as his capture target, much to his dismay. She then explains what the festival is about, projecting a map with its location into his head, while also offering to display arousing imagery if he so desires. Shocked, he screams out loud that he wasn't asking for that, much to the others' confusion. Everyone stares at Kaito following his outburst, wondering if he's alright. Ain suggests that he might be tired, and Kuromueina proposes a break, while Lilia tells the boy to not push himself. The now livid boy ponders the situation, attributing it to Shiro's message and begging the goddess to say something to him. She obliges, suggesting she can show him memories from his lewd stuff, causing him to yell in embarrassment once again, telling her to talk about that later. Once again, everyone looks at him with concern, and he states that a goddess talked to him in his head, causing everyone to treat him with caution, as Ain quickly grabs his hand and checks his pulse and temperature, while Lilia reassures him as if he were insane, and Kuromueina suggests that he rest in another room. Kaito then tells Shiro that he thought all gods could communicate telepathically, but she states that isn't so. He then thinks on how to solve this misunderstanding, and as the goddess of time begins to lead him away, he asks Shiro to do something about the situation, whatever it might be. Obliging him, she suddenly appears behind him as everyone else looks in surprise. As he thanks her inwardly for showing up, Kuromueina drops to her knee and bows before Shiro, addressing her by her formal name and asking why she came to that sort of place. Lilia then realizes that the goddess of time bowing before her could only mean that Shiro is the goddess of creation, the supreme being of the celestial realm. Kaito begins to address her informally, but Kuromueina lashes out at him and insults him for addressing her in such a way, until Shiro calmly states that she's allowed it, and rhetorically asks if he should get permission from anyone else, upon which the goddess apologizes. Ain then greets Shiro, who instantly recognizes her due to her near omnipotence, and Kaito turns to see Lilia, as the truth regarding Shiro's nature starts to set in. Standing before the goddess of creation, she has a panic attack due to not being properly dressed for the occasion and immediately faints, being caught by Ain. The boy then attempts to address Shiro formally, but she adamantly states that he may continue to address her as always. He asks her to explain the details to those present, telling them that she has personally blessed him and was the one talking to him telepathically, and appear to rectify the misunderstanding. The shocked Kuromueina asks him what he is exactly, and Shiro replies literally before retelling the whole story of their previous encounter, and declaring that she has become a target of his conquest and his desire to develop a sexual relationship. Everyone turns livid at the statement, and a frantic Kudo telepathically curses Shiro for having added fuel to the fire due to her remarks, and he turns to see an enraged Kuromueina demanding an explanation for all that. He manages to get off the hook, explaining that most of the responsibility for the misunderstanding falls on Kudo, and the goddess relents. She then notes that Kaito has earned the divine protection of the world, and asks Shiro why she is tilting her head. Unfazed, the goddess of creation asks Kaito to have tea with her, as she manifests a separate table for them to sit at. Looking from afar, Lilia praises Kaito's calmness before Shiro, comparing it to how she chokes when in her presence. But Kuromueina explains that her reaction is reasonable due to the goddess's intimidating power. Seeing him have a normal conversation, Ain deduces that he is able to do this since he is special, and his magic can accept the magic of others quickly and without hostility, enabling him to become more acclimated. Kuromueina then recalls how the boy's magic carried his intent earlier, noting that he is especially talented in using magic involving spirits and emotions, considering him an interesting existence. Ain suggests that Kudo might have taken a liking to him for that reason, and the goddess agrees, noting that he is able to converse with such high-powered beings on equal terms, and that her interest in him will deepen as he gets stronger. Kuromueina then tells Lilia to take heed of dreams, since though Kaito might find it easier to entrance the powerful, she is uncertain as to whether those beings will be pleased by his existence. She warns the Duchess to be wary of the other 6 demon kings, since Kudo is no standard compared to them, and is an odd one even in the demon world, telling her to stay far, far away from the War King and the Death King, especially the latter, whose name is Isis Remnant. The goddess then describes her existence as the Lump of Death, warning her never to come in contact with her since she will be broken if she approaches carelessly. She then tells Lilia to call for her if she were ever to come across a situation beyond her capabilities, since as one of the supreme gods, she can hold her ground against the 6 kings, and Lilia thanks her for it. Ain listens closely, noting to herself that Isis is known as the king of the sorrowful souls, but Kaito might change things. Meanwhile, the boy continues to drink tea with Shiro, as the goddess explains the reason behind Kudo's obsession with baby Castellas. He then asks her the origin of the ripple pie they're having, and she explains that she just created it, and admits that it may be a little extreme for her to squander her power on such things. Kaito then notes that they have grown comfortable, noting that it is fun talking to her and the silences are less awkward than before. Shiro acknowledges this, and declares that it is what it means to be conquered, but Kaito disagrees. Luna greets Lilia and Kaito as they return to the mansion, suddenly noticing the Duchess's gloomy and exhausted expression, and attributing it to her visit to the goddess of time. Lilia then pauses and, turning to Kaito, grabs him by the collar and begins to violently shake him, while demanding an explanation regarding what happened earlier, and him keeping such an absurd interaction in secret. She continues to shake him as he tries to excuse himself, venting her exasperation at the fact that it was the goddess of creation, and asking about the blessing as a surprised Luna begs her to calm down. She finally relents as the maid notes Kaito's state, and she desperately tries to rouse the nearly dead boy. Later, Kudo laughs at the whole exchange while having tea and baby Castellas with Kaito. As he explains that Lilia passed out, the Underworld King reveals that she is a former princess, but stating that she doesn't know the specifics about it. As she brings it up, the boy asks her about Ain and Kuromueisa's relation, noting their hostility towards each other, and explaining that they left early fearing the two would come to blows. Kudo admits that they do fight, but believes that it is the way that they show that they acknowledge each other the most, certain that by then, they must have gone out to get drinks after ending the fight in a draw. Kaito then asks her about the Sacred Tree Festival, and she reveals that at that time, the sacred tree that elves worship bears fruit, and they celebrate a hunting and gathering festival. He proposes to take Lilia there, and Kudo finds it an excellent idea, while explaining that there are plenty of other festivals that will be celebrated all year round, since it is the Year of the Hero, and sadly suggesting he experience all sorts of things in this world before leaving. She then changes subject and cheerfully leads him to bed, grabbing his hand and telling him to take off his coat while also removing hers. He then notices how her clothes daringly show her shoulders, turning red when she tells him to lie down in the bed and climbs atop him, telling him to give himself to her. Shiro's words resound in his head as these events unfold, and he thinks on how there shouldn't have been any factors to increase the favorability just then, and that they had only gone on a single date. She then notes that he is exhausted and she will give him a massage, and the boy bows down in shame, apologizing for being a filthy human. Kaito then enjoys the massage despite it being kind of embarrassing, and she explains that it is her first time giving one, before climbing on his back and doing it a bit harder. He notes how perfect the massage is, while realizing she could easily decimate him if she chose to, wondering why she is going to such great lengths for him, since he is just a regular person with no particular redeeming qualities. He starts to pose the question but changes his mind, realizing that the answer can't come from her but from himself. She then hits the bullseye, causing him to scream in pain. The next morning, Kaito enters the dining hall earlier and runs into Sieglinde having a cup of tea, thanking her for her work on the night shift and stating that he was going to get some tea. The girl then pours him tea and prepares some snacks, which he finds delicious, praising her baking skills as well as the tea. He then produces Shiro's tea leaves flask, asking what kind of leaves they are, planning to buy some more. Surprised, Sieglinde explains that they are glorious tea leaves that are only found in the god's realm and are said to be miraculous, being impossible to find on the market, though they would be extremely expensive if they were. He is surprised that Shiro just gave him such a rare item, and explains to the girl where he got them from, asking if she would like to try it out. Sieglinde is shocked at the proposal and tries to refuse, but he insists, stating that he would like her to pour it, since he isn't confident enough about his skills, and requesting that she drink it with him as thanks. She agrees, expertly preparing and pouring the tea before taking a sip. As they enjoy the tea, she gives him some baking tips and asks him to call her Sieg, as she considers him a close friend. He then asks if Lilia is still in her office. The Duchess is busy working on her desk when Kaito knocks on the door and enters, surprised to see him that early. Noticing that she pulled an all-nighter, he announces that he came to give her something for a break, bringing a tray with Shiro's tea and telling her that Sieg poured it, so she will accept it. Lilia finds it really good, thanking him and explaining that she can forget to give herself breaks, since Luna commutes to work and is gone at night, noting that there are huge piles of incoming letters. Kaito apologizes for causing that, but she replies that he actually helped her and is truly grateful. She explains that despite being a former princess, she was separated from social circles due to being in the Knight's Order, and once she rejoined, all other nobles had established connections with each other and she was left alone, and had no one to rely on, so she never expected receiving so many letters. She then apologizes, feeling she used her connection to him to her advantage, but he pays it no mind, being happy that she gained something from this and asking her to not push herself, noting that Sieg is worried. Putting down her cup, she reveals that she has known Sieg and Luna since her knighthood days, and they are both her precious friends. Also noting that the warrior had complimented him and described him as a nice and pleasant person. Kaito is glad to hear this, being grateful to her too, and he continues drinking tea with Lilia. Meanwhile, at the royal castle, the king is informed of the large numbers of fleeing animals west of the kingdom. Noting the wyverns from earlier, he orders the citizens to be warned to stay clear, while wondering what the Death King is up to. The knights who came too close to her are mentally shattered, and she's been spotted ever closer to the capital. They deduce she might be headed there to buy some books and make dispositions to prevent any casualties from her approach, including the emptying of the streets. The advisor asks the king if he should notify Lilia, but he refuses, fearing that Kaito might snap out of fear when encountering Isis. The city enters into lockdown mode in preparation for the Death King's imminent arrival, while an oblivious Kaito walks the deserted streets until he comes across a general store. Entering, he finds the place deserted, except for a figure wearing a cat costume on the counter. It is complaining about its finances, noting that customers aren't coming to the shop despite having set up in the capital, and hoping to force a sale upon a good-looking customer with money, wondering where to find an easy mark until it spots Kaito hiding behind the door. He tries to flee, thinking it dangerous to make an acquaintance of that freak, but it pounces him before blocking his escape and asking what he's looking for. Nervous, Kaito replies that he is just looking around, and the vendor pounces on this, insisting that he takes his pick from the various products, and telling him that he's in luck. It then asks what his budget is, so he nervously comes up with a figure that wouldn't be too cheap or too expensive, so he replies 1,000 R. Upon hearing this, the vendor raises its arm and bows before him, begging that he buy something. declaring him a reasonable customer and promising to bring out whatever he wishes to purchase, also asking him to use informal speech. It then introduces itself as a beautiful woman, telling him to call her Alice, and as he introduces himself and they shake hands, her costume disintegrates, revealing her to indeed be a beautiful woman. Shocked at seeing her magic come undone, Alice turns away in shame and only calms down after putting on a domino mask, chastising him for abruptly tearing off her clothes in broad daylight, while he asks her to stop inviting misunderstandings. She continues with her rant about being dirtied until he promises to buy several items, which causes her mood to turn from outrage to outright flirting. He then asks to see some shoes, and she produces a pair of exceptional quality, made of aqua lizard skin and possessing excellent flexibility and durability. He tries them on, finding them exceedingly comfortable, and asks for the price, being surprised to find out that they are such a good pair for only 100 R. After he purchases them, Alice suggests getting some matching clothes and offers to cut him a deal for them. And after he shows interest, she produces a high-quality shirt and matching parka made of rare materials, as well as pants and belt, offering the 4-part set for only 170 R. He immediately accepts, noting to the excited girl that the items seem too cheap, and noting that she must be losing considerable amounts of money. Alice denies this, explaining that she makes the items and obtains the materials herself before explaining that aqua lizards are 3-meter-long reptiles and aren't a big deal. She then explains that she made most of the wares on sale, noting that she doesn't have the money to procure stock elsewhere. She can't understand why she can't sell those high-quality products at such cheap prices, noting that customers flee as soon as they enter the door, and she is obviously oblivious to the impact her costume produces. Kaito then suggests that she sell the goods wholesale to a company, and she ponders on this, noting that she never thought of this, admitting that many consider her to be an idiot. Alice then notes that she did go to a company to apply, but they told her not to come back, oblivious to the fact once again that it was due to her costume. She then packs Kaito's purchases in a magic box and receives 900 R as payment, upon which she asks him to become a patron, noting he is her first customer. He agrees to come again, and as a thank you, the girl gives him a piece of advice, telling him the story of Icarus and warning him that being too close to a great existence, he might be at risk from an unexpected place. She warns him that if his wings were born from arrogance, they might dissolve and cause him to strike the ground, later easing the tension by stating that it was a joke before sending him off, warning that not everyone is a good person, and danger might be lurking. Alone, she notes how he met Kudo and Shiro, and how he seems to be a regular, good-natured person, donning her costume as she declares it to be a slight letdown while toying with a knife. She then pauses, throwing the blades at a hooded stranger and warning him about eavesdropping, while informing him that she has something worth telling, handing him a knife wrapped in cloth. She wonders how despite her primary occupation being super dull, she's only successful at her side job, and the stranger addresses her as Shadow Edge, and informs her that there is someone he wants her to dispose of. She replies that it depends on the reward, also asking him to stop using the alias. Meanwhile, Lilia runs through the streets. Earlier, Luna informed her of the Death King's visit to the city, and as they verify the whereabouts of the estate's inhabitants, a maid reported that Kaito had left the estate hours earlier. Cursing her brother for failing to deliver the information of the visit earlier, she prepared to leave in search of Kaito, while instructing Luna to lock down the estate and send a transmission to the boy's shadow. Running through the city, Lilia hurries to try and find the boy before the Death King does, hoping he is safe as Isis floats through town. In a flashback from before Kaito and the others were summoned to Trinia, Kudo wants to have some girl talk with Shiro. As they have tea, she explains that women like them get excited over their love lives when they meet up, and the goddess thinks on this, while remarking that she thought the underworld king had no gender. She angrily declares that she is a girl since she has taken that form, betting that even Shiro wants to try falling in love, though she bluntly denies it. Kudo insists, asking who she would want to try falling in love with, and the goddess begins stating that it must be someone she has an interest in. And as Kudo notes that eliminates the entire world, she asks her the same question. Dreamy, Kudo replies that she would want a cute person who is clueless and insecure but still searching for something, so she could teach him all sorts of stuff. Shiro notes that the description fits those baby birds she likes, explaining that if she finds a partner like that and raises him, it won't mean that it will blossom into romantic love, remarking that she has no experience with falling in love, as the demon angrily notes that she is popular. The goddess counters that the affection those people have to her is closer to worship than romantic love, and as Kudo argues that they haven't met yet, Shiro just notes that it has been over 100,000 years. Kudo counters that they must be in another world, and Shiro then changes the subject, explaining that a person was summoned to play the role of hero, opening a window and watching the boy give an address in front of the gathered knights. Seeing the young men, Kudo asks Shiro which person is to her taste, but she can't tell the difference. And the demon tells her that none interest her either. Wondering how otherworlders fall in love, Shiro gauges the hero, and senses he has more experience falling in love with girls from the 2D world, defining it as a world other than the human world. She explains that a 2D girl's affection towards her partner is represented by a quantified value of affinity, and after a certain value is reached, an event occurs, allowing one to become more intimate and form a closer relationship with one's partner. As Kudo is curious, Shiro tries to reproduce one such event, generating a classroom and schoolgirl outfits for the both of them, recreating a memory from the hero. She then explains that other events included shopping or eating together, and that when they have saved up enough favorability, they give boys powerful weapons and items to face the severe demon-infested 2D world. From all this, Kudo deduces that in order to save up favorability and get on good terms with a guy from another world, it is best to go give him a present. And Shiro continues to explain that as favorability rises, the girl also becomes stronger, becoming a capture target. The Underworld King finds it all amazing, and as the goddess of creation notes that they don't have a partner, she insists on starting right then, rejecting Shiro's proposal that she change genders and date girls, insisting that she is a girl herself and that someone will appear from some world. She expresses her desire to find this guy, becoming annoyed at Shiro's remarks, and hands her a bag of awful-tasting baby castellas as payback, surprised as she accepts them without complaint. Kudo then repeats that the pastries are awful, but Shiro thanks her once again. At the time, no one knew this yet, but those super yucky baby castellas would put a single youth through hell. Kaito walks through the streets in the evening, sensing that something is wrong as no one else is there. He suddenly feels a presence, turning to see the Death King slowly floating in his direction. He is paralyzed before this presence, certain that if he moves, he will perish, as he experiences an illusion of him losing his head. Shaking, he realizes he needs to run if he wishes to live, but Isis merely notes his strange magic, and emotionlessly asks if he is the hero. The feeling reminds Kaito of the accident in which he lost his parents, as death itself stares him in the face. The Death King repeats her question, and he struggles to respond and avoid defying her, declaring that he is an otherworlder but not the hero. She acknowledges this and pauses, introducing herself as Isis Remnant, and extending her hand to greet him as he continues to choke on his words, unable to run away. Suddenly, he notices her face change to sorrow, and sensing her feelings, realizes how lonely she is. Wondering what she wants from him and noting that she didn't put him in any danger, slapping his face, he struggles to hold his ground, certain that if he ran away, he would regret it for the rest of his life. He extends his hand against all his instincts, not sure as to why he is so desperate to properly shake Isis's hand. He sweats from the struggle, recalling how he was always scared of losing people and kept his distance, at least until he came to that world and met Kudo, learning that just one person showing even the smallest bit of kindness can save a person. Remembering the Underworld King, he sums up the situation, noting that he can adapt to magic without hostility due to his sympathy magic, with the fear he feels coming from the Death King's own magic. Steadying himself, he reaches and shakes her hand, greeting Isis and properly introducing himself to the surprised demon as he smiles. Isis's eyes fill with tears at being greeted, and she slowly addresses him and asks to call him Kaito. Holding his hand between hers, she smiles and blushes, as she asks him to marry her, causing him to become puzzled. At night, Kaito walks alone down the street of the capital. He is exhausted and feels like it's been a really long day. His thoughts are cut short as Lilia calls out to him, and he raises his head to find the fuming and somber girl before him, declaring that she found him. Without a word, she grabs him by the arm and slings him over her shoulder, stating that she will explain the situation later and they are going to the estate, oblivious to his words as she focuses on getting away before having to fight their way out. She then dashes through the streets while carrying him, and elsewhere, the Death King is seen holding a flower. At the mansion, Lilia and Kaito pant after they sprint as Luna greets them, glad to see them return safely and asking if something happened. The Duchess then tells Kaito to refrain from going outside until the next day, telling him that the Death King was spotted in the capital, and that if someone ruined her mood, they would certainly be killed. So the king has set a curfew in the city. The boy realizes that was the reason the streets were empty that afternoon, and Lilia continues to explain that the Death King is followed by extremely dangerous death magic, and that direct exposure to it could destroy one's state of mind or cause one to fall unconscious. His face turns to disbelief as Isis comes to mind from hearing the description of the Death King, and as Lilia warns him about going out, he asks her if by chance her name is Isis Remnant. The room falls silent and the stressed Duchess asks how he knows the Death King's name. even though he shouldn't be able to recognize her due to her cognition inhibition magic. She begs him to confirm that he heard it from Kudo, but he admits that he met her earlier. Lilia slumps in her desk, and Luna tries to reassure her, noting that Kaito met her and came back safely, and that due to her moody nature, it is unlikely that even he would be able to form a friendly relationship with her. The boy nervously interrupts her, telling them that Isis will be dropping by soon. Lilia freaks out at this, fearing that she will kill them all. But Kaito explains that he befriended her, and she asked if it was alright if she came by, and he agreed. The Duchess can't believe this is happening, noting how terrifying and powerful the Death King is. But the boy insists, telling her that they became friends, and she gave him a strange flower, which he pulls from his magic box. Lilia examines the crystal flower, sensing that a strong state preservation magic has been cast on it, and refuses to hear another word from Luna regarding the object. She notes that Kaito and his friends could tear the kingdom apart if they wanted, wondering what's going on with his relationships. Calmly, Luna tells her that she understands the extent of her feelings, noting that Kaito is very abnormal and announcing that she will return home for a while, asking her to be well until they can meet again. Lilia snaps at this and grabs her, accusing her of trying to escape by herself and refusing to be left alone when the Death King arrives, while the girl insists on going before that happens. Meanwhile, Kaito ponders what he has just learned while looking at the crystal flower, recalling their encounter. In a flashback, Isis asks him to marry, stating how happy she was that he held her hand and declaring that she really likes him and wishes to marry. Kaito begs her to wait since they don't know a lot about each other, and suggests that they at least start off as friends, to which she happily agrees. She then asks where Kaito lives, and as he tells her of Lilia's mansion, she asks if it's okay for her to come by next time, to which he agrees, reassuring her that it won't be a problem since they're friends. She then hands him the crystal flower, and he promises to take good care of it, as she smiles warmly at him. Nervous, he excuses himself since it is getting dark and suggests they talk later, upon which she thanks him and bids farewell. Back in the present, Luna keeps trying to escape, while Lilia restrains her, and Kaito muses on how powerful death magic is and how it can't be helped if everyone is terrified of Isis, noting, however, that she seemed really pleased to become friends, even with someone like himself. He continues to muse on this as the two girls continue to struggle. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Isis kneels alone in her castle while reading books. Seeing a picture of a man proposing to a woman, she hugs the volume while calling Kaito's name, and declaring that she has finally found the one that she is destined to be with. 1,000 years ago, in the demon world, the Death King fights the Demon King Lilywood, as she prevents her from entering the human realm. Isis insists, but she stands adamant, stating that she won't allow the peace treaty between humans and demons to be broken so soon, telling her that the death magic she clads herself in causes great fear in living beings. Isis angrily denies this, refusing to listen to Lilywood, as she tells her that she has become a source of terror to the humans. Enraged, she prepares to use scale magic on her, but the seal is shattered by Kudo, who arrives just in time, much to Isis's anger. The Underworld King tries to calm her down, telling her to wait for things to settle down in the human realm before heading off to befriend them. But Isis turns away and leaves angrily. Kudo takes note of her anger, stating that they can't help her this time, and Lilywood notes that she probably thought someone from the other realms could accept her. She wonders why Isis is trying to get to the human realm, asking if they aren't good enough friends with her to keep her from being lonely. But Kudo deduces that they can't truly understand her, and thus can't completely heal her loneliness. The Underworld King guesses Isis thinks they accept her because they are equally powerful, and they wouldn't accept her for who she is. She believes the Death King yearns for someone who will accept her unconditionally, just for who she is regardless of their power, noting that it will be hard since even in the demon realm, no one outside of the 6 kings accepts her. The 3 realms join under a treaty of friendship, and demons and the 6 kings establish a close relationship with the humans. The Underworld King gained many followers due to being particularly sociable and friendly with humans and gods alike, while the World King was adored by many races, particularly the elves. The War King was well received for his bravery, directness, and courage in battle, being worshipped by warriors and adventurers, and the Dragon King was viewed by merchants as the king of commerce for offering the services of his underlings as transport. Finally, the Phantasmal King kept in the shadows, manipulating the rulers of the world to keep the peace. Meanwhile, Isis remains alone with her books, wishing people would get closer to her, and one day she encountered the Knights Order performing a subjugation of wyverns north of the capital, causing them to flee in panic at the sight of her. Back in her castle, she continues to read a story about a man searching for a legendary blue flower at the peak of a mountain to give to his beloved. Yearning for such attention, she imagines the scene with sorrow, and then heads toward a meadow where she finds a similar flower, and then heads towards the city in search of books. Finding the city deserted, she regrets her loneliness, but has resigned herself to such a fate until she runs into Kaito. She offered him her hand as a gesture without any expectation, and was surprised when the boy pushed through and reached for her. She had waited millennia for that hand reaching out to her without fear forever, and she believes she was born to meet Kaito. After the encounter, she sought out Lilywood, asking what would make a good gift, telling the surprised World King that she had made a human friend. Not listening to Lilywood, she explained that Kaito was not strong, neither physically nor magically, but he shook her hand and asked her to visit, being an otherworlder but not the hero. The World King then recalls the incident that occurred during that year's hero summoning, and that Kaito wasn't present at the party held at the royal castle, deducing he was excluded due to the king's attempts to keep boys away from Lilia. The Death King grew somber at this speculation, and Lilywood attempts to soothe her before she ran off to lay waste to the entire country for bullying Kaito. But Lilywood was successful when pointing out that he would be upset if she did that. She then circled back to the gift, and suggests she give him some food from that world. Isis then happily wondered what food he might like, while Lilywood wondered what Kaito must be like, grateful that he brought a smile to Isis's face. The Death King then asked if she could bring some fruits of the World Tree to him, and though the World King didn't mind, she had hoped she wouldn't bring him something so extravagant. Recalling his invitation to Isis to visit him at the mansion, Kaito heads to Lilia's office and opens the door, shocked to find Kuromueina there as Lilia sobs. The goddess of time explains that the Duchess called her as she deemed the situation unmanageable, and asks the boy if he became friends with the Death King. As he confirms it, she compares his popularity power to a curse, explaining that Isis is the most troublesome of all the 6 kings, being pure and prone to becoming stubborn when slighted. She then turns, noticing a bird landing on the room, and explaining that it is a hummingbird used to send a brief letter through dark magic. As Kaito touches the bird, a scary message from Isis appears, stating that she will visit there just after noon, causing Lilia to freak out and Kuromueina to reaffirm her decision to go there. At noon, the 3 and Luna await Isis's arrival at the mansion's gate. Lilia nearly faints as the Death King floats towards them, being shielded by the goddess of time as she and Luna shake uncontrollably. Isis then approaches Kaito, greeting him while a basket of fruits floats behind her. She apologizes for coming so soon, hoping she wasn't too much trouble, and the boy expresses his happiness at seeing her again. Kuromueina then steps in and greets her, telling the surprised Isis that she is friends with the owner of the house, and asking why she decided to come. The Death King tells her that she came to visit Kaito, handing him the fruit basket before turning to greet the terrified Lilia. The goddess of time senses that Isis is releasing a lot less death magic than usual, noting that she must be in an incredible mood. The Death King then poses a question to Lilia, growing somber and menacing as she asks why Kaito was the only one not invited to the New Year party. Alarmed, Kuromueina asks what she will do after receiving her answer, and Isis coldly declares that if a human treated Kaito badly, she will end them all. She then starts to threaten a terrified Lilia, before the goddess of time jumps between them, being threatened as well. Kaito then yells at Isis to stop, disregarding Kuromueina's warning that she can't be reasoned with, and she surprisingly changes moods once again, agreeing to his request, as Kuromueina falls to the ground in disbelief. Kaito then explains that he didn't attend the party due to being invited to another event by Kudo, stating that no one treated him badly and that he was grateful to Lilia. Realizing her mistake, Isis bows to the Duchess and apologizes, while she nervously reassures her. He then suggests that the Death King refrain from thoughtlessly declaring any murderous intents, to which she agrees. Kuromueina looks at this in disbelief, barely recognizing Isis after her mood change, and turning in rage at Kaito asking if he's a monster. The Death King then declares her intention to give Lilia a gift, offering to help her in anything she wants. Lilia is petrified, but Kuromueina jumps at the opportunity and asks if she could procure the blue diamonds and ice crystals that are mined in her territory, and the Duchess freaks out at being offered such rare items, when the Death King declares that she can give her as many as she wants. A livid Luna tells her that she could earn a fortune as a jeweler, and grabs Lilia as she faints while telling Kaito to take care of Isis. The concerned boy then invites the Death King inside, as Kuromueina tells Luna that she will send her good stomach medication to deal with the situation. Once inside, Kaito offers Isis some tea in his room, and she notes how pretty it is. They discuss their shared passion for books, and he tells her that he likes books based in legends, bringing up the book about the first hero. Having read it, Isis states that the story is interesting and the book is fairly faithful to history, but differs in the ending since the hero didn't return to her world but stayed with Kudo. Kaito recalls that the Underworld King said something similar and that her name was Hikari. but as Isis notes that she changed her name, the boy realizes Noon is the first hero. Though it was supposed to be a secret, the Death King chose to reveal it to him since he is precious to her. They continue to chat and have cake, and as she takes a bite, Isis suddenly breaks into tears. As Kaito asks what's wrong, the Death King explains that it has been such a long time since she had so much fun, and did things such as drinking tea and talk about the books she likes. Everyone avoids her and fears her magic, and even though they are her friends, Kudo and Lilywood can get along with everyone, and she is jealous since she can only distance herself. Kaito explains that he can talk to her because of his sympathy magic, telling her that despite being unable to truly understand her feelings, he swears that from then on he will never fear or reject her. She then throws herself at him, crying tears of joy as he holds her. As the day comes to a close, Isis thanks Kaito for the fun she had, and they bid each other farewell. She also thanks Lilia, promising to bring lots of jewels next time she visits. As she turns to leave, Kaito calls out to her and asks if it would be okay for him to visit her house next time, and she leaves with a smile on her face. Kuromueina then calls Kaito over, telling him that after the day's events, she has made her decision about telling him something important, though how he will take it is up to him. Bluntly, she tells him that he has too much faith in Kudo. As he protests, the goddess explains that the influence Kudo has given him has a far greater effect than he could ever imagine, and that she finds him far more interesting than she thought. Though she won't interfere with his personal relations, she regrets that the Underworld King is one of them, asking how much he knows about her. Kaito then states that she is one of the 6 demon kings, but Kuromueina explains that she is the strongest, with a power on par with Shiro's. She then tells the surprised boy of the war between the gods and demons that took place 20,000 years ago, during which a demon with unparalleled power brought together all powerful demons and invaded the celestial realm. The demon resembled the world's darkness, shaped as a monster of jet black smoke. That demon was Kudo, and witnessing her true form was the first time Kuromueina felt fear. During the climactic battle, she was stopped by Ain as Shiro and Kudo fought each other until what the goddess of creation defined as a draw. Afterwards, Kudo assumed the form of a young girl, and acting as if nothing happened, she began traveling the world and raising demons and humans as if they were baby birds, like she was doing with him. The goddess warns that despite her childlike behavior, she is smart and incredibly strong, and despite not considering her evil, she is certain that she doesn't act on a whim or on goodwill, but with purpose. She is uncertain of what purpose this might be, and even Ain is unaware, but also admits that there is a slim chance that there is no real plan. She then warns him that if he doesn't know anything, getting deeply involved with her could backfire for both of them and everyone around them. He starts to protest, but Kuromueina cuts him short, revealing that she is aware of his feelings towards Kudo, repeating her warning and stating that all that's left is to wait and see what happens. She then points out that having won over the Death King, if someone has a chance of uncovering the mysteries of Kudo's heart, it is him. Their chat is interrupted by the arrival of a messenger telling her that she is needed urgently, and she quickly bids her farewell to Kaito. As he turns to leave, she has a flashback of the time she went out drinking with Ain, recalling how she asked her about Kudo's plans, but she was unaware. She recalled that as one of the baby birds left Kudo's side, she muttered that that time was no good either, and that she seemed lonely, quickly apologizing for saying too much. As she wonders what Kudo is thinking, Kuromueina is pulled from her thoughts by the messenger telling her that the urgent business concerns the goddess of fate, much to her annoyance. Meanwhile, Kudo arrives at the Death King's castle with her new baby Castellas, only to find Isis and a distressed Lilywood looking through several books. They've been choosing a book as a present, having trouble deciding which one, since they were all banned books. She states that the gift is for Kaito, and as Kudo asks if she means Miyama, she confirms this, stating that they became friends. The Underworld King then explains to the World King that he is her friend, explaining how his sympathy magic works, noting that to be able to adapt to death magic, he must have put in a lot of work, causing Isis to blush. Kudo considers Kaito befriending Isis to be amazing, noting how quickly his wings have grown, and longing for a certain day, as she gets lost in thought. Isis pulls her back to reality, and the Underworld King tells her how glad the situation makes her, and Lilywood agrees, causing the Death King to thank them both, upon which they reply that they are best friends and family. Lilywood then suggests that she leave the arrangements for the Symphonia's Hero Festival in Kudo's hands, since she has been traveling there almost daily. She bluntly rejects this, somberly stating that they've made Kaito an outcast and she hates them for it, causing Isis to snap as Lilywood looks in frustration and horror. The World King then tries to stop Isis from heading to Symphonia, and despite believing Kudo might help stop her, she is horrified when the Underworld King offers to lend the Death King a hand. They begin to plan their retribution with calm brutality, as Lilywood looks on in shock, and before they depart, she desperately offers to go to Symphonia to make the king apologize properly. As she begs them to wait until her return, the king suddenly feels a shiver down his spine. Kaito invites Lilia to attend the Sacred Tree Festival, which she describes as on a completely different level. Luna seconds the boy's proposal, suggesting she take some time off to attend, and she agrees since she never attended the Elven Festival. Luna reminds the boy that Lilia used to be a princess, though she might not look the part now, as she has become quite aggressive. And the Duchess then tells him that Sieg would know more about the festival being an elf herself. Yusuke and Kusunosa are excited about attending the festival, and the former jumps extremely high in the air due to her new magic powers. Thanks to Kudo's book, the two girls started learning magic 10 times faster than before, and Yuzuki has developed an increased aptitude for body-strengthening magic, while Kusunosa has demonstrated an aptitude for Earth-type magic, with both showing tremendous progress. Even though otherworlders tend to be good at magic, the pair is outstanding, and Kaito's sympathy magic is the rarest and also the weakest in battle. Kaito brings Kudo up to speed with the developments and asks for her help, but the Underworld King is suspicious, believing he is trying to investigate what Kudo is after hearing something from Kuromueina. She reveals that the Goddess of Time came to her and revealed she talked with him, telling her not to assume he would still accept her. He attempts to move past the subject, but she insists, noting that her black smoke true form was pretty shocking for people to behold, but the boy merely compares it to a cotton candy monster, much to her surprise. Kaito then notes that she wouldn't have told him even if he asked, stating that he would listen if she told him for her own reasons, but clarifying that regardless of her past deeds, she is still someone he is grateful for, and his precious friend. Despite having thought about it constantly, he feels that forcing the story from her wouldn't do any good, and he tells her that he didn't want her power to drift them apart. As he says this, he inwardly declares his intent to get close enough to her so she can feel comfortable opening up, and to understand her feelings. Changing the subject, he asks her to teach him some offensive magic, in case he is attacked in the elf forest, stating that not being able to defend himself is pathetic, and there might be a time where he needs to protect everyone else too. She smiles, recalling how dependable he used to be, and thinks of some self-defense magic for him. As he walks through the town, he thinks about getting some clothes and snacks, recalling his encounter with Alice and heading to her shop. Once there, he finds the shopkeeper famished and lying on the ground, and as she notices him, she pounces and asks if he's there to buy something or if he can feed her. She pauses, smelling a red bear sandwich Kaito carries, and suggests he is in love with her for coming to treat her, and begs him to at least leave the sandwich as the annoyed boy starts to leave. Alice devours the sandwich, revealing that she hasn't eaten in 4 days, and that the money he paid her is all gone since she just can't stop gambling. Hearing this, Kaito slams her head with a newspaper, chastising her for using her salary for gambling, though the girl doesn't feel alluded to by the remarks and begins to flirt with him. Undaunted, he notes to himself that Alice will probably starve at this rate, and believing she would fare better if she had a popular line of products of limited-time items. He then asks her if she has a product she can recommend, and she proudly raises her cat costume, beginning to list its multiple superb qualities and sophisticated magical features. Finding it almost dreamlike, Kaito asks her why it's a costume, and she explains it is due to the need for thick cloth for the magic crystals to accumulate warmth. He suggests she produce high-quality futons or coats to sell to nobles, and sleeping bags for the adventurers, causing her to call him a genius. She continues to praise the idea, but as the boy suggests she introduce the products to another company, she reveals that she isn't allowed to get involved in anything company-related in the capital. The exasperated Kaito then offers asking a merchant acquaintance of his for help, planning to use Kudo's influence in the Sedich Magic goods store, telling her that he will do his best to ask them to come over and look at her wares, telling her to prepare samples and don't act out. Changing subject, Alice then declares that he will need a lot of stuff for the festival and begins to offer him her wares. He notices a bracelet, which she describes as a prototype magic tool, and she offers him to try it and instructs him to press the cat's face. As he does this, his thoughts regarding the bad taste of the design appear as words behind him, finding it amazing as Alice confirms that it is indeed its function. She suggests he wear it for a bit, wishing to test it on someone who can use a little bit of magic. Sometime later, he exits the shop, having been defeated at a board game named Shogi, as Alice comments on how bad he is at it despite being an Otherworlder. As he walks away, he notes that he never told her that he was an Otherworlder, and wonders how she knew about his magic. He notices that the streets are empty once more, recalling his encounter with Isis, and suddenly feels a weird atmosphere resembling Kuromueina. He turns as a figure floating in a cushion greets him, and identifies him as an Otherworlder, sleepily asking if he has ever heard of "if you work, you lose." Kaito is confused by the being's question, and she notes that people from the other worlds are really different, before introducing herself as Fate. He introduces himself as Kaito, and she calls him Kai-chan, while asking if in his world there's a job where one doesn't work. He believes she refers to NEETs, who don't work, study, or train, and she excitedly declares her desire to become one. She then asks if she and Kaito are now soul friends, asking him to help her out and hide her, telling the surprised boy that bad guys are chasing her and she wants to hide somewhere they can't find her, refusing to divulge any further. He understands and plans on asking someone for help, and she extends her arm telling him to pull her since she is too lazy to move, and he drags her along, noting how calm she is with the whole situation. Lilia turns livid as she sees Kaito arrive at the mansion with the goddess of fate. The gods greet her and asks her to take care of her, while Kaito slowly realizes who he brought along. The Duchess gave him a death stare, telling him they will talk later, as the deity childishly eats cake. As she confirms that she is being chased, Lilia starts to imagine who it could be. Fate insists on addressing each other informally, and describes her pursuer as a horrible person, a sadist who snatches away her freedom and tortures her, having fun bullying her. She calls her a devil, and, right on cue, Kuromueina appears behind her with a somber look, just in time to hear her call her flat-chested before realizing who she is talking to. Furious, the goddess of time chastises Fate for running away from her duties, and leaving a weird goodbye letter behind, reminding her of her duty as a supreme god, and telling her to not be arrogant, as the two humans look on in shock. Kuromueina apologizes to Lilia for the trouble, clenching a rope and preparing to bring her fellow deity back to work. But Fate childishly refuses and declares her intention of living there as a NEET, while Kaito looks after her. Though the boy denies this, she insists, stating that she likes his face and he seems good-natured and able to provide for her. She's begging him to save her, as the goddess of time drags her away, even offering to allow him to have his way with her if he does, while displaying her huge breasts, comparing them to Kuromueina's flat chest. She grabs onto Kaito for dear life, begging him to save her as Kuromueina ties her up, until the boy intercedes asking if she could leave her be for the day. The goddess notes that spoiling her will do her no good, since she will still cause trouble the next day, but Kaito promises to make it happen, planning to ask Shiro to take care of it. On cue, the goddess agrees on one condition, repeating that only dating with Kudo is stingy, and asking him to go out on a date until he agrees. He then asks her to tell Fate to work diligently the next day, while the goddess wonders what is happening. Both her and Kuromueina fall to their knees as the goddess of creation materializes briefly, to tell her to work diligently the next day, with Fate agreeing immediately. As Shiro departs, Fate asks if Kai is a monster, which Kuromueina sternly confirms. Sometime later, Fate enjoys lazing around for the rest of the day, and explains that to them, Shiro is absolute, so she will follow her commands unconditionally, and that she plans on getting her favor as Kaito provides for her. Getting carried away, the goddess straight up tells him to have his way with her and be quick about it, before Kuromueina steps in. Kaito desperately tries to calm her down to no avail, and the goddess declares that running away is useless, as she looks at the terrified boy with lustful eyes and creeps ever closer. Fate's advance is violently halted by Kudo manifesting behind her, and grabbing her hair while giving her a death stare. She hoists the terrified goddess up by her hair and violently slams her away, before turning to Kudo and eerily telling him that she will discipline her. Afterwards, the badly beaten Fate apologizes to Kaito on her knees and promises never to do that again, while Kudo jokingly notes her strong defense before coldly warning her that next time that she did something like that, she would pulverize her, causing her to quake as Kudo departs. As they're left alone, the boy checks the items he purchased for the festival. Fate picks up an umbrella that he bought in case it rained, swiftly declaring that he won't need it since she will make it sunny for him, explaining that her power is to govern fate and decide with certainty what will happen. She tells him she can also know a person's fate by looking at them, but is surprised that she can't see Kaito's future, believing it might be due to Shiro's blessing. She sees his clothes, however, and seeing the fate they carry, she asks him not to die because she wants to hang out with him more. At Symphonia Castle, the king receives Lilywood in haste. Bluntly, the World King chastises him for treating Kaito unfairly and ignoring his responsibility to show gratitude to the other worlders in his care, and requests a sincere apology towards the boy in a formal setting. As the king begins to protest, she cuts him short, declaring that if he fails to comply, she will sever all ties with the Symphonia Kingdom. At night, Kaito writes in his diary when Kudo suddenly appears, curious as to what he's doing. He tells her that he's been writing every day even before coming to that world, and inwardly recalls that it was his first purchase. And he writes as if he was reporting to his parents about stuff like the goings-on in the mansion, what he saw on the street, Isis, Alice, Kuromueina, Shiro, and Kudo. The Demon Lord is fascinated by the diary and asks to read it while getting really close. The boy nervously refuses since half of the diary is about Kudo. Noticing it has been 21 days, he wonders how many pages the diary has, noting that it covers an entire year in that world, and by the time the diary is full, he would be departing. He He is pulled from his thoughts by Kudo screaming his name and telling him not to enter sage mode so suddenly. As the girl pulls him away, telling him to have some tea, he thinks about the time he has left in the world, wondering what it will be like in a year and what awaits him till then, before eating some baby castellas. A month after being summoned to another world, Kaito rides atop a Dragon Express dragon carriage with Lilia and Sieg headed to the festival in the Elven Forest. The pilot tells them to behold, as they arrive at the elven city of Rigforcia, which is built around the sacred tree, and the dragon begins its descent. As they arrive, Kusunoki comments on how nice the weather is, causing Kaito to remember Fate's promise to make the day sunny for him, and her warning not to die, and to leap back when Fate's effects run out. Yusuke then points at a baby dragon that has just perched itself on his shoulder, being the child of the dragon that brought them there. Noting how attached the dragon has become to him, the pilot asks him if he would be interested in becoming a dragon tamer, causing Lilia to grow livid at Kaito's bonds with monsters, until Luna calms her down and suggests they enter the festival. Once inside, they are astounded by the amount of people and stalls present, and when Lilia tells them to stick together, Kaito realizes Sieg is no longer with them. Luna then states that they should meet their guides soon, and they are soon greeted by an overenthusiastic elven couple making a grand entrance and welcoming them to town. The pair notes the group's shocked reaction, believing their poses were too refined for them, and Kaito suddenly senses an enraged Sieg approaching from behind. The pair merrily welcome her as their daughter, suddenly beginning to tremble as they realize her somber demeanor. And as the warrior beats them up, Luna confirms that they are indeed her parents, earning a death stare. Sieg's father then pulls himself together and introduces himself as Reinhardt, while her mother introduces herself as Sylphia of Fia, and then approaches Kaito and directly asks him what he thinks of Sieg. Taken aback, Kaito admits that she is attractive, and her father doubles down and merrily praises her and suggests they date, stopping only as his daughter angrily approaches him and straightens him up a second time. Kaito asks Fia if she will stop them, but she happily admits that he was asking for it before being greeted by Lilia, who notes that they haven't changed a bit. Noticing her sad demeanor, the elf tries to cheer her up and suggests she won't get a husband with that surly face. Kaito then turns to Sieg and asks if she won't stop the beating, before asking why they parted ways a bit earlier. She explains that they were pushed apart by the crowd, and the boy realizes that since she can't talk, it would be hard to find her again if they split up. As a remedy, he hands her Alice's bracelet and instructs her to press the cat face, causing her thoughts to appear as words above her. Fia looks at this, wondering where he got such an advanced magic tool, and Lilia explains it was probably a gift from Kudo, or the Sedich Magic Tool Trading Company. Kaito continues to explain that he can't use it that well since he isn't that skilled at using magic, and he thought Sieg could use it far better, and the girl gratefully accepts the bracelet. With that settled, Reinhardt suggests they start touring the city, healing his face with magic powers, as Lilia reveals that he used to be an Imperial Mage. He notes that his power has been getting weaker and asks if they will partake in the competition. He then explains that the Sacred Tree Festival goes on for 3 days, with each day focused on a different event. The first day is a monster hunting competition. The second day is a gathering competition with the fruits of the sacred tree, and the main festival is the third night, which will be the next day. Fia notes that the night of the festival is usually crowded, so they should check the stalls now, and Kaito sees all the stands while wishing Kudo were there too. In a flashback, it is revealed that Kudo excused herself, noting that she didn't think she could attend, since whenever she goes out on the streets, she uses cognitive inhibition magic to become unrecognizable. Due to the large amount of people in the festival, however, she risks detection, and thus becoming swarmed, regardless of how much magic she uses. She wished to go to the festival with him, and sadly tells him to have fun for her too. Kaito regrets that he couldn't go on a festival date with Kudo, and even more so that he failed to ask her directly. Suddenly, an announcer at the main stage makes a special announcement, declaring that he will reveal the price of that year's hunting competition. Since it is the 1000th anniversary of the forest, that year's prize will be a gift from the World King, the fruit of the World Tree. The legendary healing fruit hasn't been gifted since the first Sacred Tree Festival, and the crowd is surprised to see it on offer. Reinhardt explains that the fruit can heal all injuries and restore lost limbs, and Lilia looks on with determination, stating that the chance has finally arrived, telling Sieg, Ray, and Fia to take care of the group as she departs. Everyone looks in realization as the Duchess declares her need to win and departs into the crowd, with Luna chasing after her. Sieg's parents then grab Yusuke and Kusunoki and leave Sieg and Kaito alone. The boy notices how worried she is about Lilia, and reassures her that he will be fine, telling her to go after the Duchess, after which the warrior bows and departs. Kaito worries about Lilia, but doesn't believe that he should get involved. He is surprised to run into Raz among the crowd, and the fairy reveals that she came there with Noon, since the latter has been depressed. Kaito asks if she got a new haircut, unaware that she can change her hair length at will, and the fairy notes that his aura has changed, becoming soft and warm like Shiro's. He tells her that he received the goddess's blessing, and Raz notes that the world must love him after receiving that blessing, and that she finds his magic very comforting. He wonders what effect Shiro's blessing has, receiving no answer from her. Before seeing the clearly depressed Noon, Raz explains that ever since Kaito taught her how to make tofu, she strived to create a dish that would be up to her expectations, succeeding only to be surpassed by Ain's own tofu. Kaito then tries to reassure her, stating that hers would be quite delicious, prompting the former hero to urge him to try them, presenting the plates while telling him that the black plate contains Ain's tofu and the white plate was her own. Kaito tries them both, and Noon enters a stream of self-loathing commentaries before Kaito declares that he would prefer her tofu for daily consumption, praising its properties. This causes her to become flustered at the unexpected praise and utter a stream of incomprehensible words, before running away in shame, leaving Kaito confused and Raz pleased that she has returned to normal. Being left alone, they decide to walk around the festival together. Meanwhile, a clash ensues at the special training ground of the festival. Everyone else looks in awe as Lilia and Luna train with all their might, with the Duchess gaining the upper hand and disarming her maid. She urges her to pick up the sword and continue, adamant on winning the World Tree Fruit. Luna pauses, asking her something, and Lilia angrily declares that she has waited for this for a long time. She declares that Sieg lost her voice because of her, and is determined to obtain the fruit to heal her. Elsewhere, Kaito and Raz are having a nice time. Raz thanks Kaito for the fun they had that day before going her own way. With some time to spare, the boy wonders if Sieg met up with Lilia and the others, regretting that the Duchess ended up having to deal with more troublesome feelings there. He then buys some food and drops his change, only for it to be picked up by a tall man. The man asks him if he is from another world, then asking directly if he is Kaito, which the surprised boy confirms. He then tells him that he is a demon and that Kaito has become famous in the demon world due to his bond with Kudo and Isis, noting how tiring it must be to have those friendships, and introducing himself as Osma. He suggests that they have a little chat, noting his long face and asking what's troubling him. After a while, Osma notes how Kaito puts effort into trying to repay his debt to someone, wondering if he isn't overthinking it. He explains that he doesn't need to be in such a hurry to return the favor, asking if he wouldn't find it bothersome if someone in his situation attempted to repay him so bad. He suggests that that person probably feels the same way, having helped him because they wanted to, and tells him to accept that help and do what he can to help them when the time comes without overthinking it. Kaito thanks him, and the man departs, offering to give him advice whenever he wants, aware that a hooded figure is shadowing him. That evening, the group has a meal, but the mood is uneasy. Luna tries to lighten the mood asking about their day, and though the girls enjoyed it, Lilia is too worried to pay it any mind. Kaito notices this but can't help since he doesn't know the circumstances, so Shiro telepathically offers to tell him. He refuses, considering it unfair, and the goddess then gifts him a jewel. Luna continues to have some small talk with Sieg regarding her parents' strange behavior, suggesting that she used the cat bracelet more, so her thoughts appear as words, asking Lilia and Kaito to confirm this. Lilia remains completely absent-minded, and as Luna catches her attention, she rises from the table and excuses herself. The maid tries to brush it off and urge everyone to continue their meal, but Kaito senses things are wrong. In the god realm, Kuromueina asks Shiro about her gift to Kaito. The goddess of creation explains that it is a magical crystal, but is unsure about its purity since she created it, noting to the shocked time goddess that he probably won't die as long as he has it. Meanwhile, Kaito looks at the crystal, noting it must not be very pure because it's white, noting that the goddess still hasn't gotten the hang of social interactions. Unable to sleep, he heads outside to where Lilia has been training since dinner. He approaches her trying to start a conversation and unsure as to why he's even there. Recalling Osma's words, he hands her Kudo's necklace so she can use it to track down monsters during the hunt, stating that he is rooting for her regardless of the circumstances. She accepts the gift, and before the boy departs, she asks him for some of his time to tell him about herself. She reveals that she was a princess, having a different mother than her brother, the king. Due to the age gap between them, her brother cherished her as a daughter, but the situation was complicated since she was the child of the queen while he was the son of a concubine. When her brother was close to ascending to the throne, a succession dispute arose, as some began to favor Lilia as their next ruler, regardless of her wishes. She was only 7 at the time, and even though her brother did ascend to the throne, the succession talks didn't cease, with his children's claim coming under scrutiny. Lilia didn't want the throne, but she didn't wish to betray the people who put their expectations in her, so she accepted their praise concerning her prowess as a knight and remained ambiguous about her desire to rule. She came to regret it as the biggest mistake of her life, recalling that Sieg had warned her to declare that she wasn't interested, and that she feared she would end up only getting hurt. The elf had always stood by her side since her father had been her family's court mage, and she was the one who told Lilia how to use the sword. She was like a big sister to her, and they became best friends after joining the chivalric order alongside Luna. They enjoyed their time there until an incident occurred. After she took command of the 2nd Division with Sieg acting as her second, there was a massive outbreak of monsters, and 3 divisions were sent to subjugate them. Being outnumbered and outmatched, they prepared their move with care based on the intel they had, planning a 3-pronged attack. After the 2nd Division arrived at its starting point, Luna and Lilia left to attend a strategy meeting with the other forces, leaving Sieg in command of the main force. As it turned out, their intel had been switched, and the starting point wasn't safe, but instead was a monster nest. Luna and Lilia raced back upon learning this, and came upon Sieg standing alone against several monsters, while protecting a wounded comrade covered in blood and unable to speak. The other forces responded quickly and subjugated the monsters, and the division was able to escape without even a single casualty. But Sieg received grievous injuries that couldn't be healed even with magic, losing her voice entirely. Though she could not confirm it, Lilia always believed that the one who switched the intel belonged to a rival faction, wishing to tarnish her reputation, and Sieg paid the price of her indecision. No one blamed her for this, but she was never able to forgive herself, and after that, she received a court title from her brother and withdrew from the succession dispute, unwilling to see the people she cared for getting hurt. She then tried to find a way to heal Sieg's throat to no avail, but she clenches her fist as she declares that she can succeed with the fruit of the World Tree. Lilia apologizes for her outburst, but he interjects, stating that he doesn't believe she is to blame either. As she pauses, he frantically produces a skewer full of meat, and urges the surprised girl to eat and regain her strength. The day of the hunting tournament, the announcer explains the rules, and introduces the first section, consisting of killer boars, dark wolves, and black bears. Ray notes that black bears differ from red bears in that they are useless pests, and notes that Lilia and the others will have a hard time winning the tournament, especially when competing against a black-armored knight and pink-haired fairy, which Kaito recognizes, as well as mentioning a third well-known demon. Kaito thinks about swaying Raz and Noon, but refrains due to his promise to root for Lilia. He notices the amount of magic tools present in the festival, and Yusuke regrets that the live broadcast won't allow her to go around the festival, though she is clearly enjoying the venue and soon heads off to find more food. Kaito then asks Kusunoki about her going to the Magic Academy, and she tells him that Lilia recommended that she take some lectures there, admitting that she wishes to learn how to make a golem. She reveals that in a game she played back in their world, she used to be a magician and heavily invested into the Earth attribute, and Kaito notes that someone who invested into that attribute managed to get really strong. Yusuke then reappears with some food, and praises Kaito for his popularity, until Kusunoki reminds them that they will have to return to their world in a year, and the boy wonders about Lilia. Elsewhere, the Duchess has just taken out another beast aided by Kudo's necklace, noting that it is strange that they haven't run into a black bear yet. Meanwhile, Kaito and the girls have reached the end of the main street, bumping into the wall separating it from the enclosure, and Yusuke races them to the wall. As soon as she reaches it, however, the wall shatters as a black bear emerges. Yusuke freezes before the towering bear as the crowd panics. Kaito reminds her to use her body enhancement magic, but she falls as the bear strikes the ground next to her, causing the boy to rush to her aid. In a flashback, Kudo praises him for his progress with his offensive spell, warning him to only use it as a last resort, since if he uses it against an unbeatable enemy, he will only end up getting hurt. Yusuke remains frozen in place and Kaito rushes forward, unable to run away from his friends, overcoming his fear and activating his offensive spell. Believing it was all for that very moment, he then uses auto counter, and a bright light flashes from his hands. Nearby, Lilia and Luna have a feeling of uneasiness, believing Kaito to be in danger. The Duchess suggests that they return to town, but Sieg moves forward. In the God Realm, Kronois has the same feeling, and Shiro explains that Kaito is being attacked, and the fact that he is in danger is being broadcast to the entire world due to the blessing he received. She asks the Goddess of Creation if it was alright to keep this from him, and she states that it is, since it won't change how he acts. Kaito swiftly dodges every attack from the bear, even managing to counter with some blows of his own, breaking his hand in the process. The spell allows him to read his opponent's attack and counter it automatically, allowing him to hold his ground against a black bear without having body enhancement magic, but it's at the cost of losing control of his body. The spell consumes huge amounts of mana, so he can only use it for a couple of minutes, and he isn't even scratching the bear with his blows. The furious bear lunges once again, and Kaito realizes that he's out of mana and the spell has ended. As the creature strikes with its claws, he recalls Fate's advice to leap backwards once the effect is over, heeding it and barely avoiding fatal injuries as the bear flings him into a stall. The monster then charges again, and Kaito realizes that he can't even evade, as it launches a ranged attack. The attack is dispelled by Sieg's timely intervention, and the girl stands with swords drawn facing off with the beast. Lilia then jumps behind it, wielding her greatsword and cleaving it clean in half with a single stroke. Kaito faints after seeing this, and the girls and Sieg's parents rush to his aid. Rei uses his healing magic, preparing to heal the wound left by the bear, but is shocked as his seal breaks and the magic is nullified. He makes a second attempt, but soon a light starts glowing in his chest and the boy's injuries begin healing by themselves. Simultaneously, Shiro explains to Kuromueina that as long as he has the magic crystal, no one in the world will be able to kill him, except for Kudo. Rei compares what is happening to a miracle and confirms that he will be alright, while Sieg expresses her relief via the bracelet. Lilia urges them to not relax, and Rei says that black bears might work in groups if a special individual appears, recalling that something similar happened in the past and almost wiped out the city. As the monsters approach, Lilia issues orders and prepares to face off the monsters before they destroy Rigforcia, asking everyone who can fight to join them. Noon joins in, easily dispatching 3 monsters, while Raz fires arrows at them and urges everyone to continue fighting. Lilia tells everyone to brace for the onslaught, and the bears approach en masse while growling ferociously, only to all of a sudden fall silent. Everyone turns livid as they feel a presence approaching, with the weaker warriors having a breakdown, as a voice repeats how unforgivable the situation is. Cold, enraged, and eerie, Isis approaches, while furiously asking how the beasts dared to do that to Kaito. Kaito wakes up at the inn, startled at finding himself unharmed and recalling his fight with the bear. He starts to wonder if he was just dreaming, when he notices a worried Isis standing before him. The Death King embraces him in tears, glad to see him awake and safe, and telling him that she erased whatever bullied him. Still confused, he reassures her, and she tearfully notes that if something happened to him, she wouldn't know what to do, before departing so the others can come in and see him, since they're too scared to enter the room with her there. Before she leaves, Kaito thanks her for saving him, and offers to treat her to a meal in gratitude, causing her to glow with joy. He then exits the room, running into Lilia, Luna, and Sieg. The Duchess tells him that Kusunoki and Yusuke are still unconscious after being affected by death magic, and the guards are on the verge of a mental breakdown. She then explains to the surprised boy that after he passed out, the black bears threatened to swarm Rigforcia, but they barely managed to cause any damage before they were annihilated. The enraged Isis unleashed her full power, declaring that not even a drop of blood of the bears would remain, and causing them to be utterly destroyed. She then carried Kaito to the inn, while the guards and many competitors of the event lost their heart due to her death magic, and many citizens passed out, with Rei and Fia currently attempting to reorganize the decimated guards. Kaito acknowledges this, regretting the collateral damage wrought by Isis. And Lilia explains that the competition was cancelled due to the bear incident, so the World Tree Fruit has been pushed to next year. Trembling, the Duchess then falls to her knees and apologizes for putting him in this situation, handing Kudo's necklace back and noting that he would have been protected by it if he had held on to it. She apologizes for failing to guarantee the otherworlders' safety, noting that something horrible could have happened, and she's unwilling to repeat what happened to Sieg. She continues to grovel, apologizing over and over, until Kaito lightly knocks her on the head. He begins to apologize to the startled girl, but then changes his mind and criticizes her for always thinking everything is her fault, noting that what happened was an accident, and he should thank her for saving him. He pauses when he mentions Sieg's voice, noting that the girl is looking at Lilia with rage. She attempts to speak, then turning to the bracelet. As words begin to form, the girl tells her that she doesn't hold a grudge at her, and she told her repeatedly that it wasn't her fault. She doesn't grieve over losing her voice and resigning from the order, but instead cherishes the joy she gets from protecting her best friends and subordinates. And she never thought even once that she wanted to fix her throat. She tells her that she was aware of her desire to obtain the World Tree's fruit and kept silent, since she thought fixing her throat might bring her peace, believing it would be the best thing for her to do that. She finally understood that this caused them both great suffering. Removing her scarf, she grabs her injured throat, struggling to form words as she makes her vocal cords vibrate with magic. Lilia desperately tells her to stop taxing herself, but Luna urges her to listen to her voice. With effort, the elf tells her that she doesn't regret any of it and that the injury is her pride. Lilia's eyes flood with tears as she approaches her friend, and as they embrace, Kaito and Luna head outside. As they leave, the maid thanks the boy from the bottom of her heart for saying those things to Lilia, since they couldn't do it. He asks her if she shouldn't join them, but she replies that they should let the youngsters have their moment, revealing her true age to be 86, aging slowly due to being a half-breed. Rei and Fia then approach them, and he thanks them for their hard work, As they ask about Lilia and Sieg, the pair approaches, with the Duchess calling Luna out for disappearing so suddenly. She then turns to Rei, who explains that the garrison needs to rest after seeing Isis's wrath up close, and the wall needs repairing, noting that he didn't expect Kaito to be acquainted with the Death King. Lilia interjects at this, noting that he is also close to Kudo and has been blessed by Shiro. And though he and his wife first think that she is joking, they're shocked to find out it's true. Shiro then asks Kaito telepathically if he likes pets, and as he confirms he likes animals, she tells him that she sent one to the front of the inn. Exiting the building, he sees a bear woman in military uniform introducing herself as Anima, and declaring herself to be his faithful servant. The confused boy believes her to be a determined human and asks Shiro for an explanation, as the woman insists on being called Anima. The goddess of creation explains that the one soul that survived the battle expressed her desire to work for Kaito, so she gave her a body and sent her. Kaito then asks Anima for some details, and she reveals that she was a beast and inflicted a wound on him earlier. And though she should have been destroyed, she caught Shiro's attention, and she gave her that body and thus hopes to make up for her actions by being useful. The shocked boy then asks her if she's the black bear who he fought earlier, which she confirms to everyone's dismay. Rei asks her why she wants to be useful to Kaito, causing her to snarl at him for talking to her, until Kaito repeats the question. She then declares that she recalled his heroic stand as her life came to an end, but she attacked him under the control of a special individual and was unable to resist, and thus wanted to be useful to him. Rei then asks her about her fighting skills, causing her to snarl again, until she confirms her fighting prowess to Kaito, revealing Shiro gave her powers equivalent to a Viscount-class demon. The elf then approaches Kaito and whispers something in his ear. That night, Kaito is ready to rest until he hears a knock on his door, opening the door to see Sieg standing outside. They leave the building, touring Rigforcia at night and marveling at the fireflies. Looking at Sieg, he begins to thank her, before she cuts him short, and states that she should be thanking him for giving her the chance to clear up the ill feelings between her and Lilia, also telling him to never do something that absurd again. She states that she's glad to have made it in time and doesn't regret the injuries she got, but notes that she likely would have regretted having that wounded body if Kaito had died. He starts to realize that she has other wounds aside from her throat, but before she can continue, the bracelet malfunctions. She frantically apologizes, believing she broke it, but he reassures her, noting that it was just a prototype, and he gave it to her and was just glad that she got so much use of it. She blushes at this, writing that he is sly on her notepad while the clueless boy wonders what he did. In the demon realm, Lilywood receives updates regarding the King of Symphonia's apology to Kaito, noting that his request to apologize hasn't been answered due to Lilia and Kaito being at the festival. The World King then recalls how she threatened the king, promising to build an amicable relationship if he does apologize, while inwardly noting that Isis and Kudo's impression might improve if he did so, and fearing what they would do if he proved hostile. Lilywood hoped that the king would move quicker if threatened, while also calming down Isis. But her thoughts are interrupted by an underling barging in and reporting that the black bears in the Elven Forest have been annihilated. The shocked Demon King is informed that Isis carried out the deed after a man at the festival was injured by one of the bears, and she quickly connects the dots as to what happened. Fearing mass casualties if Isis unleashed the full power of her death magic, she heads for Rigforcia at once. Meanwhile, Kaito wakes up early and decides to go on a walk, being enthusiastically greeted by Anima. The bear declares that she will escort him and has stood guard since 1 a.m., causing him to recall that she had garrison work to do. In a flashback, it is revealed that Rei asked Kaito for Anima's help in the garrison, agreeing to obey the elf as the boy told her to. However, in the present, it is confirmed that she only guarded until 11 p.m. and, after a nap, started guarding him until her next shift at 7 a.m., insisting that she will guard him. The boy relents and agrees to her shadowing him, and as they walk the city streets, he asks her why she thinks she wants to follow him and not someone stronger. Anima then explains that black bears usually behave independently and see everything as enemies, guided by their instinct to fight and eat, and trusting only their strength. Thinking of her time as a savage beast, she notes that wounding creatures weaker than herself other than for survival was disgraceful, and hoped to fight a strong person she could respect. Hearing this, Kaito tells her that he doesn't think she is monster-like, and she explains that she thought she possessed intelligence surpassing other members of her species, leading her to believe that she could reach the state of being a special individual. Anima then explains that in some species, such as ogres, being a special individual is an innate thing, while for other species, such as orcs and black bears, that state is attained over time. For bears, after reaching a certain size and losing some magic capacity, they earn the power to brainwash, which is impossible to disobey. She finds it disgraceful that she was ruled by someone unworthy of her respect, and was forced to do something to regain her pride until Kaito fought her to protect someone, thus fulfilling her wish. Her soul then caught Shiro's attention, and the goddess gave her a chance to serve him of her own volition. She notes his confusion, once again declaring her devotion, and Kaito thanks her, telling her that after her garrison duty is over, he wishes her to come to Lilia's estate, glad to have her help him in difficult times despite being uncertain of whether it will work. Anima thanks him wholeheartedly, and notes that Lilia is a special individual, noting that her magical density was off the charts and she was even stronger than her, probably matching a Count-class demon in power. Kaito then realizes how powerful Lilia truly is, noticing that he hasn't thanked her yet for saving him, and wondering what he could give her. He thinks of the World Tree fruit, gesticulating in front of a confused Anima, as he thinks about whether he should interfere and recalling his conversation with the girl. He considers asking Kudo to obtain it and recalls Osma's advice, but he's pulled from his thoughts when he bumps into an elf. Anima snarls at her for pushing her master, but Kaito frantically calms her down and apologizes. The elf identifies him as the one who fought the black bear, asking to shake his hand, but the bear stands between them and accuses her of scheming. The boy then grabs her and makes haste to leave, telling her to not do that to ordinary people, while she insists that the elf isn't normal. Unbeknownst to them, her remark proves true, as she waves them away with the hooded stranger looking from behind a tree. Back at the inn, Kaito meets Kusunoki and Yusuke, and though the latter apologizes for her role in the incident, he cheerfully brushes it off. The girl then tells him that he was really cool, thanking him for saving them. Sometime later, they head to the Harvest Festival, and Fia and Rei explain that they will be joining the guards for the festivities since Anima only obeys the elf, and Lilia and her entourage will help as well. Rei explains that the festival has security measures since children participate in it, and it is the main part of the Sacred Tree Festival. During that period, the spirit trees east of the city bear fruit, and among those trees is the one considered the Sacred Tree. Kaito remarks that he believed the giant tree in the center of Rigforzia was the sacred tree, but Rei laughs at the notion. Fia then explains that the fruit must be harvested together with the spirits to preserve its quality and taste, so the point of the harvest is to make as much friendly contact as possible with the anxious spirits. This is a chance for the elves to deepen their friendship with them, and if one makes a good showing at the harvest, he can become a spirit mage able to borrow the spirit's power. Rei reveals that Fia is one such mage, and she summons a spirit as a demonstration. The tiny creature appears in her palm, and as the elf notes that they are wary of strangers, Yusuke notes that it is Kaito's field of expertise. The boy and the spirit stare at each other briefly, before the creature vanishes and returns offering him a fruit, leaving the elves present dumbfounded. They explain that being given a fruit by the spirits is a mark of deep affection, and a sign that one is a spirit mage. And as Fia feels embarrassed at how long it took her to reach that level, Lilia comforts her, noting that Kaito is definitely abnormal. The announcer declares that the Harvest Festival will commence shortly, and as everyone heads to the forest, Fia gives the girls some advice, while still surly at Kaito. Luna happily approaches Lilia holding some tickets, revealing that she bet last month's salary on Kaito winning, and the other girls begin queuing to bet on him as well, and rooting for the nervous boy. The announcer then tells everyone to enter the forest, and Yusuke patiently waits until a spirit approaches her, only to notice that another creature is already handing a fruit to Kusunoki. Fia is performing her guard duties when an elf called Regina approaches while surrounded by spirits, noting that without her, there is no competition that year, but she still aims to surpass her record from the previous year and collect 200 fruits. Fia nervously tells her that she might have difficulty winning, since a monster has entered the competition that year. At the betting board, the elves note that Regina is the favorite, but they also notice the number of people who bet on Kaito. Meanwhile, the boy is merrily traveling the forest as a swarm of spirits keep bringing him fruits, wishing to do his best and noting that he has collected about 300 fruits so far. As his stomach growls, he sits down to enjoy the lunch Sieg made for him, opening the box to find hamburger steaks and recalling that he told her that they were his favorite dish back on the other world, being the only tasty thing his mother knew how to cook. As he remembers his mother's cooking, the spirits converge around him. He offers one a bit of the steak, but just before she accepts, all spirits turn towards the same direction and begin pulling from his clothes for him to follow them. As he ventures deeper into the forest, he sees Lilywood emerging from a large tree. Kaito looks at the World King, wondering who she might be, and noticing that her lower half is connected to the tree and her hair is made of leaves. Lilywood begins to ask who he is, but he is too entranced by her bosom to know where to look, until she mentions his name. She then properly introduces herself as the World King, Lilywood Yggdrasil, telling him to address her informally like he does with Isis and the others. She tells the startled boy that she has heard plenty about him from Isis and Kudo, and was planning on visiting him after the festival to speak with him directly and express her gratitude about Isis. She tells him that of the 6 kings, she has known Isis the longest, and she is her dearest friend. And though she wanted to understand her suffering, there was nothing she could do to help, since she possesses an equal amount of strength, and she wishes to be accepted wholeheartedly by someone who is powerless. She was frustrated at being forced to watch Isis become lonelier and more sorrowful as time passed. But then, Kaito appeared and faced her, finally breaking the ice binding her and causing her to smile. Lilywood reveals that the Death King had been smiling happily ever since she met him, making her happy as well. She then thanks him wholeheartedly, and though he tries to play it down, she insists that she owes him a great debt of gratitude, too large to convey in words, offering to do anything in her power to repay him. He starts thinking, recalling what Ray said about the World Tree fruit, and he debates whether to ask for it or not, and if he should even interfere in Lilia and Sieg's matters. He finally speaks, stating that he doesn't feel like he should be rewarded just for talking to someone who he sees as a friend. Instead, he asks for a fruit of the World Tree as a personal request of his. She immediately accepts, explaining to the surprised boy that she really meant anything and the fruit isn't that valuable to her. She tells him that she restricts the distribution of fruit because it can heal all injuries and sickness, since although it cannot cure death, the spread of such fruit would cause chaos in the world, and nobody would mind getting hurt. She states, however, that is not a reason to deny his request, and a branch from the tree extends towards him as a fruit ripens and lands in his hands. Kaito thanks her for the gift, but she notes that she still believes it is not enough repayment, as she deduces that it is meant for someone else. Lilywood then tells him to call her whenever he needs her help in the future, promising to be there for him. Startled at that statement, he asks her if there's a situation in which he would need her help, causing her to look away. She then steels herself, and tells him to be wary of No-Face, the Phantasmal King, warning him that she will not allow someone to disrupt the peace of the world, even if it is an otherworlder. She tells him that No-Face probably sees him as a unique existence, and is currently assessing his worth to this world, as well as whether or not he is a threat, and tells him to call if he notices anything out of the ordinary around him. Inwardly, Lilywood is unsure as to how the Phantasmal King will judge him, but she can't afford to lose him for Isis's sake, and she deduces that he will be safe as long as Kudo is with him, hoping that No-Face might be just like them. Meanwhile, in the demon world, the hooded figure reports on Kaito to the War King and the Dragon King separately. The colossal wolf-like Megito Argetes Borgnez pays no mind to the interest of the other demon kings in the mortal, only curious about his strength. The hooded man tries to apologize for not being more helpful, earning his wrath as he senses the apology to be fake. Meanwhile, the Dragon King, Magnoel Bascus Lardo Kutzwald, is unable to understand the bits and pieces of information, and wonders what No-Face is doing, believing he is trying to manipulate their thoughts to get them interested in Kaito. Both find the situation interesting, with the War King deciding to invite him to the Colosseum to test his strength, while the Dragon King orders the hooded figure to find out more about the boy, determined to thwart whatever the Phantasmal King is planning concerning the unassuming boy. After their conversation concerning the Phantom King, Lilywood wonders if he has enough time left to finish the Harvest Festival. Fearing he might not make it in time, she declares that she will go with him, and emerges from the tree, helping him with the harvest after taking so much of his time. She justifies this, stating that the harvest is meant to deepen friendships with the spirits, and she is a spirit herself and she has taken a liking to him, due to the number of spirits that have already handed him fruits. Kaito explains what Raz told him concerning his magic being pleasant to spirits due to Shiro's blessing. Lilywood corrects him, however, noting that the blessing only gives spirits a good first impression, shrouding their true nature, while spirits open up their hearts after seeing his true nature, being able to move even the World King. She then suggests that he be more confident in himself, and the boy hurriedly starts gathering some fruit by himself as they head to the city. At the festival, the authorities finish counting Yusuke's fruits, and the girl regrets losing to Kusunoki by a single fruit, and both recall the beautiful experiences they had with the spirits. Fia tells them they have the talent to become spirit mages, and the announcer declares the highest score belongs to Regina, who has exceeded her previous record and collected 210 fruits. The elf already savors her victory, when the announcer notices the World King approaching, accompanied by countless spirits and Kaito in tow. Everyone is shocked by this, save Lilia, who grows somber once again. The announcer asks the World King why she's there, and she repeats that she helped Kaito as a spirit, silencing any complaints, and causing the man to order the boy's fruit to be counted as he offers Lilywood a seat. The baskets continue to multiply as the count reaches into the thousands, finally reaching 2,321 pieces of fruit, the largest score in history. The World King realizes that she meddled unnecessarily, especially since Kaito had already collected 400 fruits on his own. Regina turns livid at being surpassed in such a manner, And as Fia comforts her, the World King asks to do the award ceremony herself. Summoning Kaito, she praises everyone's efforts in making the festival possible despite the bear attacks, as well as the bonds created with the spirits. Noting Kaito's unprecedented record, she decides to give him a reward to praise him and Rigforcia, and asks him what he desires, discreetly winking at him. Realizing her intent, he notes the damage inflicted upon the city by the black bears, and asks her help in dealing with the disorder. She agrees, promising to dispatch her followers to aid in the reconstruction of the garrison, and to personally raise a barrier around the breached part of the city. As the crowd cheers, she hands him the tournament's medal, and declares that people wishing to talk to him should wait until the main event of the festival, as he leaves the stage carrying a basket full of prizes. Lilia then approaches him with a smile, bluntly asking to have a few words. She chides him for repeatedly running into powerful beings, noting that her heart, stomach, and spirit are at their limit, before calming down and pointing out that there probably won't be a big problem arising from befriending the World King. After she is done, the kneeling Kaito pulls out the World Tree fruit from his pocket, and offers it to her, as Fia and Rei look on in shock. Lilia grows cold, asking how on earth he keeps getting stuff like that, stating that she can't accept it since Kaito earned it and it isn't necessary for them. She tells him that what she really wanted to heal was her relationship with Sieg, and though she believed the World Tree fruit would turn back time, she has since realized that they have to move on, and take the chance Kaito gave them, telling the boy to hand her the fruit himself. Turning to Sieg, Kaito tells her that he heard her stating that she didn't wish to cure herself, but also recalled what she said about regretting having a wounded body if he perished, insisting that she have the fruit to have options, whether she chooses to use it or not. He presents the fruit to her, asking her to take it for him, and she gladly accepts. Rei then suggests that they head to his house for tea until the festival's main event. As they start to leave, an ecstatic Luna hands Kaito a small purse, declaring that he helped her earn it, and revealing that his unprecedented win caused mayhem at the betting table. At the elf's house, Rei praises Kaito as Fia rethinks her entire life. The elf then explains that the main event of the festival is a huge feast where they give thanks for the harvest, which includes food specific to that event. Miyama is excited at the prospect, but Rei tells him that as the winner of the Harvest Festival, he will give a short speech, and spend the night in the Spirit Forest Shrine, causing Lilia to snicker. Fia then hears someone knocking on the front door, gasping as the World King enters her house. A nervous Rei immediately welcomes her, and she tells them that she came by to pay her respects to Kaito's companions before the main event. Turning to Lilia and addressing her as Princess Liliane, the Duchess tells her that she now goes by Lilia Albert, and Luna explains to Kaito that it used to be her name while she was still a princess. The World King comments that though they saw each other in the palace, it is still the first time they've spoken. Thanking her for taking care of Isis, Lilywood states her desire to become friends with Kaito and Lilia, asking if it would be alright to call upon her at her estate once more. Lilia is shocked by this and outright faints once the Demon King bows in gratitude, utterly collapsing, when the World King worriedly offers her a World Tree fruit, fearing she might be sick. Meanwhile, Yusuke and Kusunoki comment on how Kaito seems to keep meeting incredible people, attributing it to the power of fate. That night, the group enters the festival and Kaito is soon swarmed by elves, one wishing to introduce their daughters, another asking to date him, and a tearful Regina asking to become his apprentice. Anima steps in, violently pushing everyone away, with Kaito actually being grateful for her intervention. The boy then turns to Raz, who congratulates him for his victory, and Nyun, who nervously attempts to talk to him before running away in embarrassment. He is then approached by Osma, who congratulates him before being snarled at and insulted by Anima. The man then asks about Kaito's well-being, noting how the boy must spend the night at the shrine instead of partaking in the feast, and revealing that though he originally intended to depart, he will remain for the main event since he has errands to run now. At the Phantasmal King's castle, she is briefed by her underlings regarding Kaito's contact with Lilywood, declaring that it is not yet time to pass judgment about whether he becomes harmful to the world, and that if he does, he will disappear. She states that him being impervious to physical harm is not an issue, since there are ways to kill the mind if it comes to that. A man enters the room noting that No-Face is saying some extremely dangerous things, and as she greets him, he is revealed to be Osma of the Peaceful Sky. The demon notes that he had her underlings followed, noting how blatantly she was hanging around Kaito as if she wished to be noticed, and wonders what she's thinking. He reminds her that Kaito is a guest of the world and still a child, wondering if she would disappear him just for the convenience of the world, or if she's trying to take advantage of the situation, warning that if the kid falls victim to her schemes, he will become her enemy. No-Face wonders as to his master's intentions, but he insists it is a personal matter, warning that he can bring his master over to his side concerning the boy before taking his leave. The Phantasmal King then orders her underlings to return to their duties, before laughing through her veil, noting that even Osma and Lilywood are not enough to measure Kaito's evolution. She decides to let the boy give it a try, wondering if he has the ability to challenge the mysteries, and angrily declaring that everything is for that person's sake. As everyone else feasts, Kaito heads into the sacred forest alone. The spirits lead him to a cave where the shrine is located. As he enters, he notices countless spirits sitting on the walls. Though he finds it magical, he wonders if he will be able to sleep on the cold ground, and wonders if he should lay out a tatami mat. His thoughts are cut short when Kudo literally flies down and lands before him, stating that she felt the need to see him. She congratulates him on his victory, and he realizes that out of all the people who said that to him, Kudo's greeting makes him the happiest, awkwardly thanking her. She then asks if the injury from the bear attack is alright, explaining that she would have gone to save him, but as he removed her necklace, she couldn't know. He then realizes that Kudo can track him with the necklace, and the Underworld King notes how he managed to save Yusuke and use offensive magic. She praises him for this, noting that she expected it to be more difficult to use in real life, and urging him to have some confidence in himself. He begins to thank her, but she interrupts, offering him a platter of special baby castellas and urges him to eat up. Trying one, Kaito notes that it tastes different from the usual ones, and has a tastier, gentler flavor. Kudo then reveals that she made this batch, while the usual ones were made by Ein, and she is glad that he liked them. He then gives her a bag of baby castellas that he bought at the festival since she couldn't attend. And as they eat the pastries, he begins to wonder if it's okay to eat there, until Kudo reassures him. She then notices the sound of fireworks, wondering if the main event is starting. Back at the festival, Rei urges the group to eat up, and praises the girls' attire, noting that he wished Kaito had seen them too, and wishing Sieg had also worn her best clothes. Fia then expresses how glad she is after seeing that Sieg and Lilia's relationship has mended thanks to Kaito, noting that it must have been difficult for Luna as well. Meanwhile, Sieg is about to beat up her father for his remarks, when her mother calls her out to draw her wrath away, causing Yusuke and Kusunoki to note how obvious the girl is regarding her affection towards Kaito. Everyone then turns as they see the World King walking around, and Rei comments that the event is about to come to a close. Yusuke wonders what Kaito must be up to, and Luna jokes that he must be off somewhere deepening his relationship with an influential figure, much to Lilia's annoyance. She is, however, right on the mark, as the boy rests his head on Kudo's lap, and the girl notes that the festival has reached its climax. Kaito compares the situation to the barbecue they attended when he had just come to the world, and wonders if he has grown at all since then. She confirms this and tells him that Shaltir was praising him and had expectations, revealing that to be the real name of the Phantasmal King, and explaining that she is well informed by her subordinates. As Kaito recalls Lilywood's warning, Kudo admits that she has a dry sense of humor, but is more understanding than the War King, noting that he would probably challenge him to fight if they ever met. She then notes that the number of people with an interest in Kaito will probably increase from then on, as everyone becomes aware of him, noting how amazing he is. Pausing, Kaito notes how he seems to be surrounded by amazing special people, capable of setting things with their own power, but he has come to realize that they have troubles like anyone else, even if they don't show them. Kudo agrees, and looking at the stars, declares that she also wishes for something, stating that it is quite common and often taken for granted. She has wished it for ages, but no matter what she does, she can't obtain it. Hearing this, Kaito wonders if the thing she wishes for is something he can't give her, but the Underworld King notes that he must be tired and suggests he go to sleep. Listening to the sounds outside, she deduces that it must be the end of the festival. Caressing Kaito's hair, she comments on how she felt pity for him at first, and decided to give him the power to become powerful, noting that he has exceeded all expectations as he has grown quickly and become strong-willed. Kudo then smiles as she looks down on the sleeping Kaito, noting that he is going back. Tears begin to well up in her eyes as she calls him mean, leaning over and declaring her love for him as the spirits gaze at them. Kaito wonders if the thing that Kudo wishes for is something he can give her, before waking up in his room in Lilia's estate while reaching out with his hand. Washing his face, he notes to himself how much has happened during the 3 days of the Sacred Tree Festival. As he steps outside of his room, he is greeted by a maid, who asks if he is heading out, and informs him that she will put the laundry in his room and that he has received a letter from a person called Mary, who is the manager of the Flying Dragon Service Company. She then reveals that she knows her since Lilia is the owner of the company, and she had heard that he was being scouted by the Flying Dragon Service, noting how animals seem to love him, and waving him goodbye. Walking around the city, Kaito considers the possibility of becoming a Flying Dragon pilot. He has thought about it, and despite living a sheltered life while under Lilia's care, he realizes that he doesn't have to be a pilot, but since he can work using his own, he can properly live in that world and stay. He brushes aside these thoughts for the moment, heading to Alice's store and apologizing for breaking the magical tool. She examines it, finding the code in disarray, and asks if he used magic while equipping it, causing the boy to recall Sieg's attempt to speak with magic. Alice reassures him, stating that there were concerns about the durability, and the data is more important than the product either way, cryptically noting that he should know that. The unassuming boy then hands her a written report about his experience using the bracelet, stating that he believed he was meant to do that as well while testing it. Looking at the report, she calls Kaito a good-natured person, before screaming in pain and declaring that she hasn't eaten anything in 2 days. The boy asks her about the money he paid her in his previous purchase, but she continues to over-dramatize her situation until Kaito offers to treat her to something. She immediately cheers up at this prospect, declaring that she knows a nice place to go, before pulling out a massive crystal with carved bands around it out of somewhere. She explains that the device is a magic teleportation tool with a cooldown period of 30 minutes that allows one to travel long distances. Hearing this, Kaito tries to ask where they're going, as Alice activates the device and transports them to the middle of a street in Alexandria, the capital of Archlesia Empire. The oblivious vendor notes how they stand out among the crowd, as Kaito rolls a paper fan to smack her for teleporting them without any explanation, but she tells him to calm down since people are staring. The boy then resigns himself to make the best of the situation since they are already there, noting how different the streets are from those in Symphonia. He realizes the weather is chilly, and Alice explains that the city is located in the north and at a high altitude, and the Empire of Archlesia is known for its mines and its refined architectural skills. In contrast, she tells him that Symphonia is known for its food culture and well-developed agriculture, made possible due to the pleasant weather they enjoy year-round, and their relationship with the World King also ensures that the land is rich in greenery. She also informs him of the existence of a third country named Hydra Kingdom, located in the south of the human realm, and it's known for its trade and fishing, full of innovative spirit and at the leading edge of the fashion industry. As the lecture on the human realm concludes, Kaito asks Alice if Alexandria has a specialty that explains them traveling there, and she cheerfully confirms this, pointing at a monster race arena and inviting the boy to have a blast. The boy begins to prepare his paper fan once again, as he accuses her of bringing him to a gambling den, under the pretense of going to eat somewhere, noting that she doesn't have any money. She tries to calm him down and asks if he will play a game with her, suggesting that they both bet 1,000 R, and the one who ends up with the most wins. As stakes, she asks to be treated to a luxurious dinner if she wins, while offering to do any one thing Kaito wants her to do if he wins, dragging him along even before he agrees. Eating a drumstick with a beer in hand, Alice cheers as the races are about to start, while Kaito regrets giving in so easily. He tells her that he placed his bet on a monster named Funny Rabbit, and she laughs at him, noting that the creature is only fast while chasing prey, smugly stating that she bet on steady winners like Grapple Wolf and Wind Jaguar, stating that data means everything and certain that she will win the bet. As the race starts, Funny Rabbit immediately takes the lead, much to the announcer's surprise, and easily finishes the race first, causing Alice to become livid and Kaito to be relieved. For the second race, Alice bets 100 R for Grave Horse, while Kaito bets on Tyrant Turtle regardless of the girl's dismay, and the turtle eventually emerges victorious after knocking down all opponents. Kaito keeps on betting on the winning monster in the next 2 races, but Alice refuses to admit defeat, and stubbornly and almost psychotically declares that she will turn the tide in the next race. In that 5th and final race, the announcer presents the large species as everyone becomes hyped up. The frantic Alice explains to Kaito that every monster present is top class, and it is hard to predict who will win, meaning that huge amounts of money are being bet, and the payout is huge. Seeing a dragon enter the arena, Kaito notes that it doesn't seem like a normal race anymore, and Alice explains that strength also matters, since the large species battle each other while racing. She explains that the monsters are mostly raised from a very young age, being gifted by the Dragon King, and instructed to listen to humans. The crowd roars as a behemoth is led into the arena, and Alice tells Kaito that it is not only a rare animal, but also on par with a high ancient dragon in strength, being one of the strongest monsters in the world, being monsters of legend. The beast turns towards Kaito with a sorrowful face, and the boy realizes that it is looking right at them.